So hairdressing is very.
Мы не то чтобы повторяем, но проходим только случаем на рисование на доске. Каждый день похоже на учение про архитектуру, составлять процесс генерации ценностей. Я сделал модель денег тайна. Что нужно сделать, чтобы еще эта модель изменила весь бизнес? Для примера мы взяли похожую ситуацию на ситуацию Семена с архивом салонами командой. И там мы придумаем, что примерно прописываем таблички, процессы, да, с каждому свое. Ну, точнее, каждый сам вариант, который я задаю кейс. Или придумываете сами, или берете свою реальную. У кого кто уже получил, должен или дальше больше года имплементировать. А всем остальным достаточно просто более-менее подробного описания.
Что делать?
Без программирования. Ну, разве что посчитать меры выбора. So let's continue. We have stopped on that we have to understand if our efforts actually work, because we came to the point where we have a table with ID and spendings, kind of date and what service was given and how much it cost. We came with a table where we have data about communications, and we have a table with recommendations, kind of that this person might turn out. So we are my turn, so it's worth to talk. So to whom to talk, if we talked, if they bought. So on the level of the interface, the analytics service, kind of the output of the analytics service has to be what? Kind of what are you expecting as the outcome of analytical service?
So in this case, what is analytical service? It receives data from those three tables?
Yeah, well, no. In general. So let's go slightly from the beginning again. So we have a model, we train it on something, we supply it monthly or weekly batch of information, we've got the predictions, we put them in the table, we make people call, we've got the statistics. Have we delivered the value?
We don't know yet.
Yeah, we don't know yet. So this has to understand if we have we delivered the value or not. That's the point of the blue box with weird name analytics.
Yeah, so I guess we want to have some kind of value, customer value, lifetime value kind of calculation that we're pushing that around, we're changing that.
Cohort analysis, I think воронка. I think
Funnel. Funnel.
To some extent we will see an improvement if the longer customer stays with us, our program is efficient.
Yeah, so it's a recurrent task. So basically, if we visualize in lifecycle grid, these are the first customers. This is the same robot, I want to understand. If they churn, they move this way. If they make a purchase and we stimulate them, they go to the beginning because the recency is the most recent, but then they are one step higher. So every next purchase moves them into the more valuable category because it kind of forms a habit, hopefully. The problem is if the habit is formed only by the discounts, then it's a questionable habit. But in general, it's still a way to incentivize and create a habit. even if it's just a reminder, like, hey, it's time to go to the barber shop or to the procedures, no discount for you. But kind of then it's about the habit, and then it has pure value, but probably lower success rate. It costs almost zero. Maybe have some success rate, which one we can try to measure. But basically, it's a repeated process. If this customer is churning again, we again incentivize him to go to the next level. And eventually, this customer gets to, well, I wrote them VIP, but so it's multiple stages. If we take the segmentation part, every time the customer gets into the weird zone, kind of here, not too far, because if he was not in the barbershop for a year,
Someone else is going to get there.
yeah, kind of maybe he moved. Definitely, he doesn't care about a particular business. But in this zone, it actually means that we are kind of safeguard. Well, not this zone. This zone. We are safeguarding churn.
The vertical axis here is frequency.
Frequency.
No, value. Vertical axis is value.
It's frequency, and frequency correlates with value. So if it's what's called life cycle grid, it means it's recency frequency. This is called life cycle grid by its author, who is I think I'm not sure if I posted the original blog link on 20 whatever year it was introduced. Arial with Web 1.0. But anyway, so this is a frequency, and frequency means just the number of interactions or sales during the period, and it's highly correlated with a monetary value if we take recency frequency. And here it's recency time since last purchase. So these guys are very valuable because they already spend a lot of money. It probably means they have enough money to spend. Kind of, it's not their last money for the barbershop or cosmetic procedures, whatever. But this guy who just haven't bought many things yet, he might deserve a discount, but kind of incentives for the guys who paid way more money can be higher. If it's about long-term relationship and not just being on one haircut. So in general, we put a fence, and then we have an extra group of valuable customers that we are working on. So our recommender system would predict something which in this part in the middle. So anytime our recommender system, not lifecycle grid, but recommender system would think that a person is susceptible to leave, it would get into the mailing list, okay, or calling list. But instead of just rule-based approach, we're getting a solution based on multiple factors, how much money he spends, how often, well actually some recommendations here, the churn ones. I've seen that in industry, it's in the retail industry, neural networks with memory layer works really well, kind of better than other methods. And memory layer means they can, you feed into them a chain of events with dates, kind of not date as a feature, but kind of 1, 2, 3, 4. What is the next action of this person? And like, yeah, it looks recurrent. So there are more or less kind of stepping into advanced side of the data science methods that might generate an interesting churn models. For example, with a rational, like there is a time series, you have to go to the barber shop, you have to go to the barber shop, you have to go to the barber shop, you haven't come and you haven't come. Probably it's really time to incentivize you this time because something went wrong. But you hide it in in-memory layer of neural network. It doesn't do a particular this logic, but it resembles the tendency of repeatable actions. So anyway,
So
how do we understand that we're doing the right thing for the business?
by positive cash inflow.
So the interface out has to say how much money we have earned based on our actions. So we are interested, revenue, for example, as simplest thing to measure, or income. It doesn't matter, revenue, income. How do we know if what we did increased our revenue or decreased our revenue, or for example the market is falling? Because in the classical books about the marketing and analytics, business analytics, you have the condition. For example, your revenue trend is going up. Is it good way or bad way? And the plan B, your revenue trend is constant. It actually means pretty much nothing, because if the market grows faster than you, then it means that you're falling. And if you are constant and the market shrinks, it means that everything is really good in your business. So it's always about the benchmark. And the market is a general concept in this case. So it's always about the comparison. For example, your revenue is shrinking, but the market is falling even faster. So it means you are getting bigger market share, and when the trend will change, you are accidentally will get significantly bigger than your competitors with whom you started on the same point.
And is there pretty complete competitor information
No.
in this?
No, and this is exactly the problem. So we can we can remove ourselves from the market perspective, but we can easily benchmark ourselves with standard efforts and extra efforts. Like for example, if our business is falling, but with our extra efforts it falls with a slower rate. It's more it's still falling. We do not know if we're doing something entirely wrong, but we know that we will get a particular improvement because of our actions. But this is in our control. But again, in many countries in some countries I've been, I know that at least retailers download the database of the products of their competitors and use in their internal analytics, or they leak their friends, family, etc. particular internal documents, which frankly do not have high costs. You cannot shrink the business of the competitor by 10% or even by 1%. But you can try to guesstimate what is happening inside. But this, I've seen it multiple times. I mean, it doesn't really give you competitive advantage, but it gives you an understanding, I guess, where they are and how bad are the things. So, we have to measure revenue or income for control, if to be frank, control and treatment group, new income, or whatever.
So like the kind of things that like if I would be interested in finding out if I was a beauty salon is what do so what do my customers who I've had for 10 years look like? And what does that customer look like when they walk through the door in the first interaction? So I have all these customers who are brand new to me this week. Which one of those are similar in some way that I don't know with people who will stay around for 10 years? So how do you create a business model to say, yes, this is the first interaction with somebody, but we know because of other demographic information or other behavior or other something that this person resembles a customer that is a high value customer for our specific business.
Let's say I'll rephrase to at least two more online story, but it's basically about the same kind of. There is, and it starts to be again abundant, but growth hackers and all the guys who aim at growth, but part of their skills is about this. Well, not the software engineering part, but A/B testing, multivariate testing, etc. And online, it's called in online marketing. It's called aha moment or something like this. So basically, an actions which a user has to do at the first time, kind of first period of using the platform, which dramatically increases retention. For Facebook, I think it was adding at least 10 friends on the first few days of being on the Facebook. And if you add the friends, it means that you massively increase the chances of come back again because you see someone inside. And based on the story, at least how it is marketed, it was not done based on the logic, but based on the data mining. But this is stories, folklore about the data mining. I'm pretty sure it was just guesstimated, but the folklore is that they mined the data, they understood that this is a critical point, so they started to encourage people with embedded tutorials like pop-ups, and if you are new, add your friends, recommender system which recommends your potential friends, and if you know them, you with high probability add them into your network, etc. So from my perspective, it's not only what they look like before and in some time, but what actions do they do to stimulate actions to stick together with the business. For example, people who stick with the business, well, with fitness centers, I'm not entirely sure, because fitness is it is stationary when you're working, and then you burn out, you throw away the sports for 5 years, and then in 5 years, I'm rusty and fat, I have to do it again. But with other things, there might be a particular behavioral pattern which differentiates people who churn fast and people who churn low. So the general idea is to concentrate on the actions, kind of on purpose confuse correlation and causality, and hope that what we found as a correlation with people and friends is actually a cause or leads to the cause that makes people stick with our service. So it can be frequency, it can be, I have no idea. Different businesses have different things. So it's not only about the portrait of the clients before and after, but it's about the first actions, or kind of actions in the first periods, or regular actions. In the fitness center, it's about frequency and recency. But for example, when we're talking about computer vision, it's maybe about the routes that the person is climbing, that the difficulty is.
But this really salon example. For example, I might want to do things like saying, look at the postal code of my best customers, and I discover that all my best customers live within 15 kilometers. So when a brand new person walks in my door, I look at their postal code, and if the postal code is within 15 kilometers, I should spend extra effort because this person has a higher chance of being one of my high-value long-term customers. Or
Makes sense.
So there's like to try to look at like look at my
hidden
high value
value.
customers and say, or to say, well, this person's phone number is not a Ukrainian phone number, it's from somewhere else. I should ask my front desk person, what hotel are you staying in? And it turns out that actually this hotel is recommending salons to get your nails done.
Mhm.
And so I should pay attention to that linking, or
This might make sense, but you are not influencing much. So, for example, if you understand that it's a postal code, then you can do location-based marketing, try to target people from a particular region. For example, in my case, I built a system which recommended ads based on location and weather.
on what's right?
Location and weather. And if it's rainy, we sell raincoats. If it's sunny, we advertise something like sunscreen. So I built the first prototype of internal system which was connected to a big advertisement system for location-based marketing. And actually it was slightly trickier because the company didn't want to pay for external client, and I've scraped a certain amount of lists of points of interest and the whole OpenStreetMaps. And I had, I do not recall, but between 5 and 10 million points of interest. And when we had coordinates of the person who watched the advertisement, we could try to estimate where the person is. Is it coordinates nearby the university, or the cafe is nearby, or mountain refuge is nearby, kind of what is the closest place. And in some exercises for uplift modeling to whom we have to show the advertisement, location-based features were the strongest one. They were all super weak for some types of advertisement, but number one was if we have a particular type of store in proximity of the client. For advertisement company, for the store, for example. So for me, it's not only about the location, but about the actions that you can do based on the knowledge. And if your VIP clients are all living around, then you should recruit more people who are living around. So basically not to react on the entrance, but react on the entrance to your sales funnel. Kind of 5 steps before whom you are distributing your ad. But that's the same principle, just a few steps ahead. If we have this data, but this is about exploratory data analysis and then insights based on it. But anyway, analytics service, revenue control treatment. Which kind of report we want if we would be on the human side of this analytics tool. So there is probably C-level here. What do they expect to see? Well, if the average ones, they expect to see that everything is right or wrong. If they're data-driven, they want to be sure that the right or wrong is true. So basically, if it is you here,
basically we can do this analysis, recency, frequency, before any actions, then after actions, and see how many clients move from right bottom to upper bottom.
yes,
Upper class.
you can embed RFM here.
Before and after.
Kind of before with a different time frame, so see how people move in between cohorts. Or instead of RFM, you can do cohort analysis. So for example, you have your benchmarking cohort which was treated with your marketing efforts versus cohort which was not treated with your, so basically treatment group and control group. And then they came next month after the ad. This is good. How much time did they stick? And a control group, it doesn't mean that they all left kind of after churn or a particular amount of population. So for example, if it is cohort analysis, this is January and your treatment group still exists kind of hopefully longer period of time, and your control group stops visiting you faster. So you can put as one of the indicators that your treatment is working, a cohort analysis between treatment and control. Or statistical analysis that they spend different amount of money in a particular period of time. But again, 1 month can be not enough, so you have to take longer reporting periods. Which kind of data we need for this? We have these tables. Actually, we have to have sales data, information about the contact, and to whom we recommended at minimum. But since we're comparing two groups, kind of, if I trust technology, it's fine, this is enough. But if we do not trust and want to check, we have to understand the customers who do not come in particular group. So we have to have an appendix again of A/B testing, manual or automated, preferably manual at every stage, which actually adds or extra table or data, probably an extra table because it's long-lived, which generates with help of the analyst table, which first samples visitors of the whole business, sample all customers. If we have enough enough customers, not to split them on 50-50, but take a 10% subsample, and this subsample do the whole experiments. So there is sampling, and then there is separation into treatment and control groups. So since this can be a relatively long-lived test, so this table has to be alive for at least 2 months. So when you do the analytics, people from control group are not being called or offered something, because they can be offered a discount, but they should be let alone and see how they churn. If we want to be data-driven. So basically, when we are generating the calls here, we have also to query a table if the person is in the control group or not, or treatment group. If they're in a treatment group, fine. If they're in a control group, throw them away from the list, which has to be called. The question is how to sample visitors and how to recruit them. This is basically what was about the first 1.5 days of the course. You have to make your decision and then maybe automate it, or do it once manually to split into the groups, and do a long-lived only A/B test for 3 months, for example, or for 6 months. Then repeat the procedure, but if you repeat it once for 6 months, manual is perfectly okay. If you have 1,000 demands, it's not. But for a small business, manual is probably more than enough.
Would you say repeat the procedure? Which procedure?
Sample generation, etc. You have to calculate which effect you are expecting from another technology. And if you try testing something new, or what effect you're expecting, how much people you have to recruit in your research, how you select them randomly and non-randomly before and after treatment or whatever, etc. In theory, it can be 50% of your user base, of everyone, if you're a small business. If you are a big business, it can be 10% split by 5 and 5. Or 1% split by 50-50. But this is a question of unexpected effect and the math that we discussed yesterday and the day before yesterday. If we're checking the famous companies who are doing A/B testing, they're doing it automatically. But because they're doing it regularly and all the time, this is a kind of a standard business process. Every team goes through it on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. So of course then it has to be automated. You have 100 teams, once per 1 or 2 weeks they have to use the same process, then it's not about manual calculation. If it's 1 per 6 months, manual is good enough. Or a macro or formulas in Excel. So there is a table about treatment and control group and a particular procedure to select a sample. It's also a part of analytics, but recruit groups. It's also a part of analytical tool, which can be entirely manual, but it has to be, so you enroll people here, and then you add information flow for those who you shouldn't call. And when you calculate the analytics, you basically take control group and treatment group separately, check their communications, results, incomes.
But anyway, if I split to 50-50, I will not. I will do my A/B test during 3-6 months.
Yeah, for small business, you would have to, if you will do this as a homework, you have to calculate the statistical power of your experiment.
Okay. If statistical power is enough, I can take 10% for first month. For the second month, I can take another 10%.
If it is enough.
A/B test.
But probably it will be not enough, so you'll do just one test for 3 months on 50-50 of all the users. And then after...
If it's calling, actually, like in a practical basis, it's probably fine to do 50-50, because you probably won't call enough people anyway.
We have to, that's the question of capacity here, and of the mathematics here. Because if you're seeing that you're not able to do a statistically significant solution, then it means that either you drop the whole idea and you do not spend money on every kind of this part of engineering, or you have to add the workforce or automatization here if you don't want to add the workforce. Or you are willing to wait not 2 months but 6 months, for example. That's juggling few balls at the same time, and you cannot drop any of them because they are all interconnected. What else? So analytics, do we have to add something to analytics?
Root of fire. So this is all, since we're returning back into an advertising thing again, where we're just reaching out to people. If you want to change about things that you do inside the business, you know, like which employees have higher churn things, should we give everybody free coffee, should, you know, designing these kinds of testings.
If then it's a separate groups, kind of employee 1, employee 2, employee 4 and 5, for example. If they have different, kind of we're going to detail design and we are changing requests right now. This is fine, this is an exercise, but we have to be very clear what is happening with our sort procedure.
Yeah.
So we're starting to dig deeper, and now like, oh, business has another question. We're coming on the top. In this case, this doesn't change, this doesn't change much. Data model will change a bit because we have to add a field which is called caller ID.
Yes.
No, I meant, yeah, like who cuts your hair?
Or then caller ID here, because for example, if it's about sales effort, and if it's about execution,
Some stylist loses all our customers.
barber ID. Well, I cannot read this by myself even. barber ID. So we change this. This doesn't matter because we're a small business. System interfaces changes a bit because now we have to carry a barber stuff, but we add one field to existing interfaces. Data model, we add the field to existing interfaces. Then analytics might change the logic of analytics because our form of A/B test would be barber versus barber, or a group of barbers versus group of barbers. But if it is random selection, it would be random versus random, and if there are just, I don't know, 10 or 15, the size of groups are relatively small. Let's assume we have made a pure random choice. There is no point in this experiment, random versus random. So we have to somehow create a selection criterion to the trial, especially the one that we can map on hiring or on training. And then see, for example, if a group of better trained barbers have better retention rates. Then we can encourage less trained barbers to go for the training, or if they leave, hire the one with better training.
But I think we can compare people even without A/B testing. Just compare. This is it.
But this would be kind of still statistical experiment, or just group by. For example, you have to measure a retention rate.
Yeah.
I know that this client.
This guy was every second per client, and this one is every second.
Yeah, but still you have to have
Data.
client ID.
Of course, yeah.
And then you just gather data kind of group by that. But this is cohort analysis. For example, this client, this script would look generally like this: barber ID, client ID, first appearance, and then last. If last was relatively long time ago, like let's say 6 or 3 months old, it means that this person is churned out. And then basically this is binary classification. So if it was last more than 3 months ago, it's churned. If it's less than 3 months ago, it's not churned. But this is again a statistical trial. Do we have enough size of sample to see the difference in binomial metrics? This is binomial, you use chi-square test of independence to understand if...
Is he different than the other?
Yeah, is he different than another one? Well, you can just compare the numbers, but if you have 100 clients for both barbers, one has 80 to 20 and another has 75 to 25.
Is it bad luck? Or
It's bad luck or it's a system. This is an input for chi-square test for independence. Exact input. And you are getting the answer. It's about kind of looks like a bad luck, or the guy is really worse. Or how much time you need, how much customers you need to enroll in the study. For 200, 300, 400 to understand if this small difference is a luck or professionalism. So, and we're coming back to day 1 and day 2. Simple stats. Or we wait for 1 year, get the pile of data, and make a decision, let's say, 6 months later. And here you can use something like ANOVA for binomial distribution, because you have many barbers, so you can compare all of them and then do pairwise testing. It's another protocol to compare not the pairs but everyone.
I can divide loss on existing and they see ratio and sort.
Yeah, but the ratio is noisy.
But chi-square will give me the same result.
No, chi-square will give you probability that they're statistically different. And if you're calculating the ratio based on, let's say, left to all, chi-square test of independence or other statistical test say if it is by chance or not. So you're comparing left to all of one person versus left to all another person. It says, you know, the numbers are different, but it is by chance. So it means that the ratio will be the same. And if you will calculate here, there is a ratio, I don't know, 0.7, and the ratio is 0.65. Is it by chance or not?
No, I don't know. For this,
It still requires to have a test.
only one.
Yeah, only one test. Only one or multiple n few participants. We had
We wanted to see the value of the customers, right? They might lose customers because they only keep the good ones.
case sample. If we're not doing pairwise comparisons, non-parametric tests, we just have to check if it works with binomial distribution. If we're talking about money, mean actually works with money. So if you take in kind of occurrences, I'm not sure this fits, but chi-square looks like it's kind of chi-square pairwise. Chi-square would work better. If you're talking about the revenue per person,
An experience
3, 4, 1, 2 in the statistical guide.
An experienced barber with a relatively full schedule might churn people on purpose who are low tippers and actually just keep high value customers.
Yeah. So you
High
get
churn rate could actually be smart on their part.
Yeah, so churn rate may be fine for them, but then we can check the revenue.
Get rid of low performing customers.
And that's exactly the reason why we had to stay long on the manuals and statistics. Because it doesn't really matter if you do machine learning or not. Machine learning still has statistics inside, and we cannot really understand if it works or not. I will kind of, as an example, do you recall, have you looked precisely in the curve that we've built, revenue versus sorted by probability churn rate predictions?
Recall.
The last curve that we were doing simulation. It's not.
Recall decision.
It's. Call it. It looks like this actually. If you will check correctly. So it actually means that our kind of on a particular small scale, our model thinks that this person will churn, but in reality he is not an opposite. So this is due to statistical noise. This is on the graph. So if you look carefully, it's not a straight and smooth line. It's rotating. And if you are interested in small differences, you never actually know what is statistically significant. Because this is based on our current data. And the data that we do not have theoretically might have something else. So our final decision making still has the same statistics on board, or at least feeling of the statistics. You do not need to sit with statistical tool and check your every decision, but you still have to understand that there are margins of kind of things can go wrong and how we can save our business from decision made by chance. Is it clear? This part. So yes. So should I rephrase?
Maybe different words.
With different what?
Words.
Yeah, rephrase. So basically, if you will check the curve, it's not theoretically it has to be smooth. So if this customer has higher churn rate than the next customer, so it has to go only up the curve. And then it has to go up, but then kind of to be more flat. It has to be выпуклое.
Convex.
It has to be convex, because each next customer has a smaller probability based on our model. So we have higher probability of not earning money. Then it is still higher probability of not earning money. Then it is even higher probability of not earning money. And it starts to accumulate. So it's convex. But if you zoom the line, it goes up and down all the time. The trend is convex, but this up and downs means that we haven't ranked people properly. The model is not perfect.
That the person even with highest
Yeah, the one that's
to churn, he can stay. With
he
us.
can stay, and the person who with lowest chance to churn can leave.
Can die.
Yeah, leave, die, whatever.
Shit happens.
And this is what we see in our training data, and real life can be even more noisy. So in real life, these fluctuations can be higher. And this is up to your managerial knowledge, viewing of the data, or spending hours crunching numbers to understand safe margins for decisions.
And also like speed of action of the decision. You know, if you getting a report and you need to just change the whole business, maybe get a couple of reports, maybe.
Yeah, that's about the statistical power that we have. Our hunch is too early to be statistically significant, or it is statistically significant and something goes wrong. That's the difference. I do not encourage you by any means to do statistics on every action. That's too high overhead. But you have to understand that there are unexpected things which happen due to chance. And with time spending on statistical procedures, you will start getting a particular, non-precise, but a feel of, does things look good enough or not. And as in addition to this happens when your statistical if you draw a population from the random sample, if you have a perfectly random sample, you have a perfect setting of the experiment, etc. And this fails even more often. So you would be able to avoid some part of the mistakes just reviewing the prerequisites of creating a setting of the experiment and not sitting with mathematics like, oh, it's not random, there is no point of doing mathematics, we have a bias. Something wrong. So most of the things fail, at least in my perspective, when business is not ready for data-driven decisions. Most of the decisions fail here and here. We even not start the mathematics.
And this data quality O, what is it? DQO, data quality O.
Observation design.
This is
Analysis.
my notes.
I can go.
It's something in the protocol which actually doesn't. It's just the name of the protocol which doesn't change the meaning of it.
Data quality objectives.
Yes, data quality objectives. This is data quality objectives. The DQO process, which has the problem, identified also all the theoretical things without any mathematics. So when I actually come to real, mature business, in many cases, all the problems happen in this state. There is no math involved. Just asking how did you draw the sample, then saying yeah, probably things go wrong already.
We asked a couple of those.
Let's repeat data collection procedure. Nothing else, no statistics. So in most cases, the decision making based on data starts from doing the assessment if the data was gathered correctly.
So, in fact, this is data collection, links.
Yeah. If the data collection is biased, there is no point of running statistical hypothesis.
But on the stage of data collection, it's biased means that we didn't collect all the data.
Or the groups are not random and we're expecting to analyze them as random, or they're not random and we have no idea how to account for extra variables, for confounding variables. Or we have to do a crazy huge study to understand the confounding variables, put them into regression analysis, and to derive our metric. But confounding studies can be 10 times longer than saying, no, stop the experiment, repeat the experiment again on other locations, but properly. That's, in my perspective, the shortest way in many cases. And kill the experiment and restart again. And not try to push the correct data by analyzing 100 other potential things that might go wrong with improperly drawn sample. Okay, if just by chance, instead of random sample, you have paired random sample, so like person, treatment, person, by chance, it never happened in my life. Then you say, okay, I'll just use another method, everything looks fine. But this is impossible situation because you have some nasty things that just, you throw all your hypotheses, and you have to write 3 PhDs to understand how to get to a normal conclusion out of it.
But also general question, yeah. So for this specific business case, yeah. What's your estimation, yeah? How much does it cost, yeah, to build up this infrastructure, plus to hire data scientists?
This one? Or in general?
This one, for example, yeah? Because I doubt that benefit will be actually paid off, yeah.
For a small business, I don't know.
It's about $50 a month.
No, but why $50? So to build up this, you need to hire.
All of these are all off-the-shelf products. Every single one of these steps is something you can just subscribe to.
If you like to play by yourself, I'm pretty sure that everyone in this room with, let's say, 3 months hands-on practice struggling can build something which would be, from engineering perspective, poorly built, but will do the trick. Everyone in this room.
There are software products that do booking, that then connect to your point of sale, and then put the data together for last visit, merge with email lists, send out the email automatically, track whether they come back.
But that's again a pretty simple stipulation. You have a turnover of, or revenue of X. Which improvement do you expect with the loyalty program, churn prediction program? Then you take the calculations, or opposite. You estimate the budget and you check which kind of improvement you have to achieve and think if it is realistic or not. This is a base of being data-driven as well. You compare budget to potential effect and see if it's possible.
Yeah, like all those cards you get from stores, that's just like the customer-facing thing of like this process, and it's the cost of it super low.
Yeah, it looks like one kind of CRM, some CRM system, yeah, but plus some analytics, and I'm not sure that just you pay $50 and you can get it. You need to configure all the stuff at least. Yeah,
Life of the small business owner is tough. It's like the better if you a top manager in 10,000 people company. So you probably find the budget to hire someone.
The thing is that all of this has already been figured out. The businesses are all the same. Like it's the same.
Yeah, it's
exactly the same. It's like
it's about it's customer relationship. Yeah.
when it's not on the customer relationship. It's most of the processes are similar. When I look at this set of tables, I really understand that in the business I'm working, I can build the same. nothing changes. Well, technology changes because we have 6 million people enrolled in the loyalty program, and we can do more experiments than 5 barbershops, but that's basically the whole difference.
Yeah, these barbershops, it will be very rare if people will go there each day, if you can stimulate that behavior. So, but with a shop, you can really stimulate
It depends.
frequency very often.
How often do you buy washing powder, sterling powder?
Not my job.
Yeah.
My never.
Yeah, well, never is also an answer. But you do not do it also often because you buy a particular.
We buy it on a need basis, I would say.
Yeah, but I go to barber shop on a need basis as well.
10,000 customers.
Yeah, but there are, with the shop,
Yeah.
you buy many things which is not on the need basis.
It does the
So
same.
this would not be that segment of product.
Right, but in the store margin is pushed down, in the services margin is generally higher. Because many products in the stores are sold with 10-20% margin. For example, some of non-food retailers and non-electronic retailers in Ukraine on the weekends have roughly 30% of their assortment discounted because people in Ukraine buy only discounted things. 30% of assortment, you have 30,000 SKUs and you have to put 10,000 discounts on the weekend.
Stickers.
Yeah, 10,000 stickers, and after the weekend, remove half of them. And
Digital.
well, they're checking the digital ones, and then next weekend they again have to put 5,000 more. But when you come to the shop, it's like in one you have discount.
Silver started to put digital.
Yeah, we're checking it as well. But with real-time price predictions, or the prices. Connects to centralized system with machine learning, etc. Streams.
So far, it's no problem.
No, I know how to do it, but given the velocity of things in the company, I would probably be retired at that point of time. And it's roughly 25 years from now. So, yeah. So let's get back to the system. So anyway, when we're talking about caller IDs or barber IDs, this data is a prerequisite for another experiment, which do not need to be automatic, but it has to have a particular infrastructure and setting, which you are qualified now to estimate. So can we consider that analytics is done, kind of in general representation of the module? Is something missing from analytics?
So when we say analytics, in this case we mean the metrics based on which we can understand that our experiment is good or bad.
Yeah. Well, our efforts. Because it's not about the experiment. We can do experiments in 2 hours, but to do all of this, to make it in production, make people call, people have extra work, they're not happy with it, etc., 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 is it worth the trick? Because, for example, on the first day, we analyze the case where not the existing people do the extra job, but we hire more people to do a particular kind of job. So the costs are increasing. Is it justified or not? So, for example, all people in the stores are busy. Would you hire a call center or people, one person to two-person call center to call people or not? Kind of, it's simpler if everything, you do everything for fun and it's your master thesis in the business school and you have a free workforce that sits on the table, etc. Then probably ROI of the project will be positive by any means because you do not spend money. But if you have to hire a developer, hire call center staff, train, etc., how is it still positive? Or maybe it is negative on the small business, but if you would have 50 barber shops, it would be fine. That's the question. Okay, so in my perspective, analytics seems to be more or less closed question. So we either do statistics, or we do cohort analysis, or we do RFM based on control and treatment group. For the small store, for the small business, we do not need to build probably something very fancy. It's just enough to do one test for a long period of time until we get statistically significant results, finish the test, start a new one. Start and finish approach. What have we forgotten in the process in general? What else? There are a couple of things that are that we have forgotten. I mean, they are important, but we haven't finished them.
Try to be back into the beginning, I guess there's that part.
Mm-hmm. Well, we have to build a data set. Are we building data set out of a control group? Or we do three-group design?
The data set for chunk prediction.
Yeah, the one that we are training our model.
But we do it from the beginning. I mean,
Yeah, but this was, but people change, behavior change.
so we are speaking about the next
Yeah, kind of your, let's say, cohort analysis takes 6 months to finish.
Okay.
For example,
You do it out of the treatment group.
for the treatment group. But are you willing to leave your model for 6 months unattended? And are you sure that in winter behavior is the same as in summer?
Not sure. But if there is a 50% control group, we cannot put them apart forever.
No, unless they are a group for building data sets.
Victims.
Yeah, kind of. So you sacrifice part of your efficiency, part of your client base to improve the efficiency of another one. But again, what then the size of this?
Yeah, it may be 10%. Okay. Maybe.
Depending on your size of business. Maybe one.
But at some point, though, you want to call everybody. So at some point, you fold the control group into the main thing, and then you start.
Then how do you build the data set
I
after
think,
this?
I think you to train the next go around. I think you use the treatment group.
So then you optimize, kind of, you have treatment group, and you still want to have an uplift comparing to the treatment group.
Yeah, so you put treatment group to build a data set. You break down the.
So you hope to do this, kind of, and then.
Yes, that's exactly it. Be
Uh,
careful not to get backwards.
well, the improvements are not with the slope, actually, because sometimes it can be.
Yeah, enough of that.
And then something goes.
But so you train the next model on the treatment group, and then you remix your customer base and divide them again for a new 50-50 to test the next.
It's possible, it's one of the ways, but from statistical perspective, it's a pretty advanced question. We have to survive until that point of time. For example, right now, for me, it's really difficult to answer the question, because from one perspective, statistical one, I actually feel, not I haven't calculated, but I feel that it is biased. But if I'm a business owner, I really want to add up the slopes. I really want to do that. And I really want to put the influence not on 50%, because when we do A/B testing, our actual result is half. So I'm saying, okay, let me apply it even twice more and do the next A/B test and half. I really hope the double uplift. So I'm greedy, I want to do that, but my feelings, not calculation, says that something is wrong with the setting. So I would go to some literature about multiple groups recruitment, if booking leaves untreated, they kind of part of the clients with no treatments. First version of site booking.com, which is 15 years old.
So your instinct is then you just keep that same control group forever?
Because I'm from the edtech. Because edtech is the kind of when new customers come, you kind of some people churn from here, some people churn from here. So and newcomers also split 50-50 and kind of refeed the groups.
I guess before you started this project, you had 100% control group where you're doing nothing.
Yes. But in edtech, at least in the places I used to work, we always had untreated group entirely. But I never heard that booking, Skyscanner, etc. leave entirely untreated groups. So I don't know. Kind of, this is the thing that I would have to sit with the scientific papers, industry best practices.
My feeling is that that's because the company is too new. Because you're calling it an untreated group, but in fact, on the day that you started this ad tech company in 2008, you actually were applying all of the treatments that were figured out beforehand.
Maybe. And I think this is just basically the time when the company was founded.
Yeah. So
Because it's kind of 100-something million words probably.
If it was a truly untreated group, you just have like a banner ad from 1996, you know? Like there was some
But kind of, there is some kind of, I'm not a fan of doing this, but as a business owner, if I would be a business owner in this case, I would be a proponent of actually trying to add up the slope, but with extra precautions. Anyway, so what is missing? So basically, we need a process of building data sets. It is here, but how do we build the data set? We join our sales data with personal data, maybe with this kind of data, maybe. We join it into the table. We check that we select only people who are in control group. So basically we remove all the treatments on the first stage and we build the data set. How do we work with this ones? It's a similar process, but we take the treatment group. Or we take everyone, kind of we build for everyone, but we subset only the group that is in treatment for actions. Because we can ask customer kind of, we can build data sets for prediction for everyone and then still subset the treatment group and apply it on the treatment group.
Okay, but what about new customers? Let's imagine we have the
inflow. They are separating in between groups. For example, a new inflow of the customers came and some customers left here. Yeah. So we split them and add here and here.
split randomly.
Even if there are 3 or 4, it doesn't matter. If we split randomly 1 year in a row on a daily basis, the final distribution is supposed to be random. Plus you have relatively big groups here, so 3 unevenly split people will not really change your stats. That's what I would do. So there is an extra process of enrolling new clients. Kind of how we are kind of splitting and adding them, not in the manual way, but there is new client enrollment kind of service. We check if the client is in the database. If not, we do our splits and add them to the tables. Do we track when we add the client to the table? I'm not sure, because we can backtrace the first purchase date in the table of the purchases. Or we can add a column here, enrollment date. I don't know. But then again, this is detailed design and unclear requests. Kind of. Why do we need to do an extra work? Is there an actual benefit we might get? Kind of, have you, well, you have random person who wants this system running, have planned an experiment where this enrollment date influences the outcome. If no, no point of doing it.
But without the enrollment date, we will not calculate the
cohorts.
We have the purchase data, and in general logic here we take the time of the first purchase, last purchase, last purchase after the threshold, churned. If not, but it has to have an extra margin, because, for example, if our predictive model starts to suggest people for the calling after 1 month, we have to conclude that they churned after 3 months. Not the same as model, but 3 months or 6 months to be entirely sure that they left. Or, for example, as a business rule, if people who come once a year, they consider to be churned, because once a year is not a high valuable customer for us. And kind of we are aiming those who come once a year, make them come 6 times a year. So there is a question: what do we consider churn? He never is come back. He do not come back to our barber shop, or he comes back once per 2 years. Is he in churn or not?
For the purposes of actions, is churn.
For the purpose of actions, it's churn. So I would say 3 months or whatever. Because if our, for example, if we have to go to barber shop every month, 3 months, it's churn.
Here, churn is tricky question, because it depends, really depends. I mean, this signal will be change of RF metrics. The signal of churn will be change of RF metrics.
Yep.
Because you cannot imagine how many ladies visit salons every.
Yeah, but every week it means that they are here, and it's very, very, very.
She come for 2 weeks.
Means that you lost her.
We lose her.
That's why, yeah. And that's why another kind, that's the question. Then you have subgroups. But if you have subgroups, if you want to make a separate test for them, it's a separate test. You cannot just mix them. You can hope that your architecture of the model is time aware. But still, the ground truth can be, for example, you can, I don't know, slightly risk, do 3 cohorts of people, I don't know, ladies who, cohort 1, cohort 3, cohort 2, and different rules of what means the churn. But then you have to fix the rule and hope that the rule is consistent. And then you have to split new clients into those cohorts, because here it's just random. But if you have different understanding of what is churn, kind of not 6 months for everyone, they came first time. Which kind of churn do we expect for them?
I will put in new users, new clients.
They do nothing for.
Nothing out. Maybe something for them, but they are separate segments.
After new clients, churn.
After a while,
Then they get segmented.
Then you are aiming, if you want for perfection, then you have 2 sets of models. One model works with all the new clients, and their churn is on their terms. And another model or set of models works with segmented clients, with different rules for everyone. And instead of one model here, you have 2, 3, or 4.
for new customers, it is 3 months or something like this, and for all others.
Yeah, and then if they fall into category of frequent visitors, but that's, you see, you have multiple models, and then you have to denote which group this people belong to.
Model
So
will
you
be
change the database again.
model will be one. Model could be only one if we put those dummy variables. I mean,
Yeah.
No,
the same model
no,
can,
It is frequent visitor.
yeah,
It's
if you put a dummy variable,
Yeah.
frequent visitor no,
Yeah.
then it would leave it longer. Yeah. But when we're aiming for perfection, in my business experience, when we build products, first you do everything with one model, then you build an infrastructure for multiple models, and switch to multiple specialized models.
So you start with weak lasers.
Not at the scale of 5 BC stores, but at the scale of tens of thousands of requests a second. Then we switch to multiple models.
so I overrated it.
No, well, it was not for the barber shops, and each request brought us cents, only cents, not a few dollars, but still.
I want some barbershop to call me with my haircuts. That's what I want. Just call me. Just tell me when it is. Come on Thursday. Oh, thank God.
So yeah, we do list of customer actions. So if we get the data for prediction, taking into account that they are in the treatment group, we collect the data. So we store scripts, SQL queries either in code, or we store them in the procedures in the database. Do we monitor the model on more frequent basis, not in terms of what is happening in 6 months, but do we survey if the health of the model is fine on daily basis?
I don't know what that means to monitor.
For example, I don't know, a DevOps made a mistake, or we were not sure about, we wrote it not in the virtual environment, and the machine updated, and now another a new version of package, and our code broke because of a new version of package doesn't work, or our model is now more biased.
I don't know.
So what Booking recommends is in the same paper as there was the graph. They recommend to do the following. They took, in their case, in real life, they calculate probability density plot of the training test, and in near real time of the predictions. In our case, it would be something like this. We do not have two separate classes, unfortunately, the model is quite weak. But, and if this will change dramatically, it means something broke, either in the data that comes or in the process. So, but it's not a strict model monitoring, it's model monitoring without understanding any business metrics. We just monitor the outliers. So if we are careful about how we built it, there is model monitoring. And then there is infrastructure monitoring. It's not very critical in terms of uptime, because most things here happening in the batch mode. We can turn on everything on 1 hour a day, do everything that we need, and switch off everything. But in general, and actually, though all those models can be at the same computer physically. It can be even in the same monolith code, but then it will be a nightmare to work with. Or we can take, as a data scientist, we can take, for example, something which is called, for example, Airflow. It's the scheduling, more or less advanced scheduling system for working with data. It can run SQL queries, Python scripts, shell commands, etc. And we write it as a script, this as a script, this as a script, this as a script. We create an Airflow query, process chart. We run it on the single server or on a small cluster and relax. If something fails, it notifies you that the process blah 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 failed, so we can restart it. Kind of. Me being a data scientist, I would not do a software architecture. I would do based on a data science kind of driven way scheduling the jobs. I'll Google Airflow for you and show you. I didn't thought I would tell about it in this course, but I'll show a brief intro. That's it. So today we clicked through the model, which took us 1.5 to 3 hours of our working time. This is just this part of the business. To deliver a value, we have to go all the process, which includes everything. And now let's.
If I may, this recency. So here, low recency, and here high recency, correct?
So this is very recent, like this month. Usually this is 12 months ago.
Recency, yes. This is today, this is many months ago.
Well, you can turn it anyway.
This is...
Yeah, this is, they come weekly every 1 year. And this, they came once.
Weekly and 1 year?
Yeah, like they did 50 times. So less important clients would kind of the one that do not go on the weekly basis to cosmetologists, they would have a ceiling somewhere here. And only with years, if you accumulate information in years, they will grow here. But if someone who spends 55 visits a year would stay years, they would still will be significantly higher.
In detail, is it really make sense to go 1 year
Yeah.
for frequency calculation? For recency, okay,
Depends.
but frequency...
There are different kinds of retail. For example, in non-food retail, FMCG, the frequency in normal terms can be once per 3 months, especially if it's not the main store. And if you buy TVs, you buy TV once per X years. And you buy a phone if you are a weird guy once a year. Otherwise, you buy less often. And maybe once a year you buy
Cable.
oh yeah, cable and the cover and the glass on the top. So that really depends. I've seen businesses with an average time of recurrent purchases of 3 months. Yeah, depends on what. And let's go to the board view. This is the top level.
Maybe a small question.
Yeah, sure.
Is there any somewhere a resource which has such already ready diagrams with process?
Any kind, well, just Google.
Okay, so there is no some
Just
special.
Google. Well, there are plenty of special ones, and we do not bind ourselves to visual representation. For example, in a BPMN standard, things supposed to look the same. I'm not bounding us for the same standard. The database has to look like this, table has to look like this, and let's do.
Okay, but what's correct term for this? It's
In this case, it's system architecture.
system architecture of data flow.
Well, it's most of that data flow diagram, data and modules. They can be in the same machine, and it's relatively high level. Why? Because theoretically, when we build a production system, we cannot allow our models to contact database directly, so we have to put an API in between each service and the database. Then, if we have a module, if we take the infrastructure task, not infrastructure but architecture task, we have data access objects, we have business logic, we have presentation logic if it's here. So, and these are sub-modules inside the module. And in some guidelines, you do not have one module for a presentation. For example, you have two different modules. Kind of one that is responsible for interacting with the client, another responsible for interacting with business logic. So I'm not asking to be architects. I need just a relatively black box which says here we expect to get predictions, or here we expect to get a list. For this list of customers, we have to get data from there, 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 and there. So, is everything is fine? I do not recall when we come back from the lunch. When?
If we think about 3 p.m.
If we came at 3 p.m., then it's time to have a break.
Yeah, right.
Мы где-то вернулись?
Да, ровно 3.
Okay, so it appears that we came from lunch at 3, and we already spent 1 hour and 20 minutes. It's exactly our. So there's a break. Right. So, any questions about this?
The thing that, and this type of thing that I'm most interested in is increasing the speed of identifying new clients as potential for the top right corner of like finding out what is the thing about them that will end up like that.
You can try to read about aha moment. It's actually called aha moment, Facebook, etc. The one that actions that make clients recurrent.
No, not actions, not actions, but like
Features?
features like that, right?
Yeah, kind of, but features in
So what's the
aha moment. Aha. You know,
aha. Ridiculous.
And there are some optimized, but everyone knows them and points fingers at them.
I've heard of Netflix.
Same.
Like that's their example constantly.
I recently nice optimized business.
Oh yeah?
Of business which is optimized.
Yeah.
Well, first it's part of fun, so almost on FAANG.
What's that?
You know?
No.
So it's when you look for normal salaries in the United States, you have this acronym NG, and there is an extended one. Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Google. So Netflix stands in one row for software development culture with those guys. And there is extended part, cruise, self-driving car, and a few other companies. So when you say, yeah, probably Netflix is good,
Yeah.
everyone in IT knows what is fun. And Netflix is one of them. But Netflix is a very good example of kind of customer retention. I probably told you the story, I'm not sure if he was here. I've met an engineer from Netflix. He was reporting a scientific research on computer vision that they pushed into production. In reality, it will never, ever, ever get a positive ROI. Ever. But they published it in a very solid scientific journal, etc. They say kind of they're traveling on the conferences around the world and advertising the results that they're doing actual fundamental research. Why? Because this drives a talent for them, but it doesn't drive ROI.
Yeah, they have lots of money. It's a small percentage of the way to do these things. And I guess you keep these guys.
But basically the cost of the research that they presented, I would estimate roughly $1 million spendings kind of before tax, but on the executor side, and then company pays taxes, and it is in California, so probably $1.3 million per paper. It's my estimation.
Which is for them nothing.
But basically, it's comparable to a budget of a decent IT startup that works with the same technologies but tries to put them directly in production for a couple of years without big marketing, but for technology development.
What's Netflix's annual revenue? What's Netflix's annual revenue? 15.8 billion. They can export $1 million.
$1 million for a paper which is state of the art in the world, actually.
Oh, it actually just passed 20 billion.
So I think we should. Well, it's 8 minutes. I know we started 20. Yeah, so we can start. Yeah, as I said, close to the coffee machine, if you're interested in general business terms, data science is not your word to Google. You have to Google data-driven marketing on the level of CEO of online retailers. You have to Google product management, and you have to Google for growth hacking.
Growth hacking. Growth hacking.
Mm-hmm. It's already, well, it's a discipline, and many American startups have even positions like head of growth hacking, growth hacker, blah, blah, blah. So basically it's a set of tools which helps to hack and speed up the growth of the company. They include A/B testing, they include statistical tools, but other than that, they include non-statistical approaches, so you do not need to be a mathematician to be a growth hacker. You need to kind of look for approaches to make company grow. But I would say, let's say half of the tools require basic statistics because they include A/B testing. So it's...
That was came from some Indian guy.
Well, you know, from another perspective, CEO of Google, Amazon, Microsoft, and something else. The third biggest company, also 1 billion, or 1 trillion, is also from India. They recently changed. So there are, well, frankly speaking, there are 1 billion Indians, so of course they can form decent CEOs.
Oh man.
For A/B testing, our internal client could be not only marketing but also product manager.
Yeah. Because if you have a product manager, especially data-driven one, he will push you for A/B tests, for statistical tests, he will do kind of all of these things. So, kind of non-technical product manager is the one who knows Excel in advanced form, kind of can do cohort analysis, etc. This is non-technical product manager. Technical one in the tools can code, do statistical simulations, etc.
But in retail, product manager, I mean, who is product manager in the IT company, I understand, but who
Yeah, in retail, there are product managers who supervise a particular products, but in Ukraine I haven't seen decent product managers in retail companies. I've seen in online retail. I've seen in products, and some of them are, let's say, so qualified that with non-technical background they get O1 or O1 visa to US and go to US with genius level visa kind of to work, to immigrate.
what in online business, what they do, product managers?
In normal business?
In online.
Online, for example, they are in charge of some part of the business. And for example, if, for example, product manager of e-commerce, this is a high level one, or a product manager of some feature in the e-commerce, and they do internal tests, statistics of what are the tasks for developers to modify the product so it works better. They have their set of metrics. But basically, when you have a product manager for the part of the business, you have to have the metric that they are aiming to optimize, or set of metrics.
So, and marketing do in this business?
Marketing
structure?
usually
They create just a customer flow.
they spend a budget for efficient customer flow, including measurements of customer lifetime value or cohort analysis or any proxy of it. So the customers that stick to the company.
Okay, so then in offline business it is brand manager.
Yeah, but I haven't seen data-driven brand managers. I've seen very decent products. No, data-driven with statistics background.
A guy who works for Adidas, who's a data-driven brand manager. A friend of mine works for Adidas, and he's a data-driven
In Ukraine?
Oh,
brand manager.
yeah, well, that, we're picking the good examples, and then of course they are.
Yeah.
But average example, kind of, it's better to read papers from internet, kind of online, from online businesses. MacPow, if we're talking about Ukraine, Pinterest, kind of all sorts like this, and many of the lessons can be transferred to real business. I mean, it has to be done creatively, but it's possible. Good. So, couple words about your homework. I'll write it slightly later in writing, probably until the end of the next week, because I will sleep first 3 days. You would have to build this for any business you would like to, even if the business is imaginary. But if it is imaginary, you have to go back to
Unicorn show.
it doesn't matter. But if you're doing it for imaginary business, you have always kind of in your imagination to fix requests and clarifications. So it's imaginary business, I'll do whatever I'll write and it is correct. You have to write extended description of your imaginary business and then a solution. If it's a real one, you still have to write the description of the real one and the solution. With imaginary one, if you are not sure about something, you can change the task and put the result that you know. But I do not believe that it is an easy task in general, so if it's going to be imaginary business, it's fine. Even if the goal seems to be selling unicorns, I don't care.
No, so
Just tell me which infrastructure it operates.
It is not up to date. Up to date, I would say unicorn sharing company. It is.
Doesn't matter, but you have to state the infrastructure, the goals, the hypothesis about the churn rate, etc. So I want this.
A unicorn recommendation.
So yeah, you have to write these as a document.
You mean in words? So
In words and drawings.
Okay. Because I like only drawings. I don't like words.
Well, have to put a lot of words in your drawings then.
Okay.
That's the first part. And then second, it has a particular set of tests embedded in the logic. It doesn't matter, it is going to be a model, a segmentation, kind of non-probabilistic or probabilistic approach here, but it requires to have some kind of comparison. You have to spend an extra effort to understand what are you comparing, nothing to something or something to something better. You have to derive hypothesis on influence on you have to pick your target metrics, which you're trying to optimize. You have to guesstimate. It's like back on the envelope estimation in architecture, but you have to estimate base rate, change rate, standard deviation if it is continuous, if it's binomial, the distributions, and you have to put the calculations of a statistical power, amount of samples, etc., for your business to have valid test assumptions. So infrastructure plus practical understanding of what has to be done. I am not asking to write you, it has to be a randomized sample drawn from the same distribution, because yeah, we talked about it for a long time. You can write IID, kind of in acronyms. It's not the point. I want the core of your assumptions about how business works and what influences the experimentation. For example, if you are doing it for 1 billion users a day startup, then do not put improvement in metrics by 10%. It's impossible. Put an improvement of the metric by 0.001% and then calculate the statistical power. If you are checking a chain of 2 restaurants which opened 3 months ago, you can put higher growth of metrics that you want to improve, but kind of it has to be logical and meaningful based on the positioning of your imaginary business or real business, and not like let's put 10% in a billion people. Yes, everything is so simple now, except impossible.
Does it necessarily have to be a business? Doesn't have to be profit thing?
No,
It's just a decision.
It's decision, you optimize
It's
the metric you want.
Supported decision.
Yeah, supported decision. And infrastructure for it. Can be non-profit, which tries to gather money, whatever. I've seen, once upon a time I was working in outsourcing, and I was asked to improve, we declined the project anyway, but I was asked and sent the code of the program which predicts which companies and donors will give money for different parties in the US for elections, based on the donations of the last year. So people who scouting for donations can rank the donors and do this stuff. I reviewed my GitHub and I still have access to the code. X years later, like 7 years later or something. With data that was not updated, but still, I mean, you can break your legs in this code. So it's simpler to write a new one, yeah. This is also, but it was a business for money, but it doesn't matter. I'll send you slides, Kenneth, I'll send you a few slides and a short book about architectures, which you have to look through to catch up with 3 main architectures, which are used from time to time. Microservices, layered monolith, and event-driven. I'll send you I'll leave a note personally for you with the things that you missed yesterday. Good. Then I've also promised a short extra about engineering culture. And I've decided not to follow standards, software development lifecycle and other things. I've recently seen a very intuitive organization maturity model, which I cannot find references except for the author who showed one slide. So it means that it's made by kind of someone which is not an industry standard, but I feel that it would explain organization maturity model for technical organization for you in the best way, better than life cycle and all the standards for IT. So, 5 steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. First step is source control. So these are the tools like GitHub, SVN, SVN and others, but the most dominant one is GitHub. So the developers push their code into the single repository. It already requires a particular cultural change because you have to expose your code to your peers, to your supervisor. Everyone or your supervisor sees your commits, kind of your changes. And for example, once I was managing a company that was semi-remote, and we used kind of time tracking. Time tracking, kind of from time to time we were doing screenshots of the developers in the random time. They were allowed to delete it, kind of, it was never used against them, but just as a resort tool, kind of, if we see a low performance, we could check what exactly the person is doing and understand if it's a low performance because of the objective factors. For example, the person is doing R&D task, which is pure R&D, and he just stuck because of the complexity.
It's hard.
Yeah, because it's objectively hard, or the person is doing nothing and working 3 hours a day, sitting in St. Petersburg, and we're in Kiev or somewhere else. And later on, especially for software development, I've built a particular sense and understanding that I do not need sprint tracking. I need to see commits. Commits of the code, of the experiments, etc. For the data scientists, except source control, there is a similar version that controls code plus data. It's GitHub styled system, but it also stores the training data and the results of the experiment. One of the variants is DVC, as far as I recall. They are all, by the way, Git is open source. You can make your own free Git server. Some private repositories from Git are also free. When you have your email, by the way, you're eligible for, I think you're eligible, I'm not entirely sure, but it looks like you're eligible for a student discounts, free student pack on the GitHub with access to a particular set of courses. All students who work full-time are eligible, but maybe they will miss that you are part-time ones, especially if you have the student cards.
We are full-time students.
Perfect. So you go to, I'll advertise you. I thought to bring it to the school, but frankly speaking, I am volunteer for everything which is not regarding to this class. So I do it when I have time. So you need GitHub developer pack. Yeah, student developer. Wait, I'll share the screen. It will save you a few hundreds of dollars minimum. So I would say it's a good investment for this 5 minutes of the time that we will take. No.
Can we do it for every minute?
Huh?
Can we do it for every minute?
Well, some of the things might improve your career, and
Then
you
it
will
will
get.
be more. It will be better to study than to.
So you go here. It's called GitHub Education, and you need a student's GitHub Education. You have to enroll, send your photo. send your photo of your student card with you through the interface, and in a few days they will give you the following. Some technical things like $100 GitHub education coupon, free extended JetBrains, $100 Azure credits. $100 are not much.
It's nothing.
Yeah, it's nothing, but from things that I like, there is a platform which is called Educative. They have particular courses on the system architecture, which are simple but more extended than, but it's mostly driven by high scalability. It's free, you can log in and browse through the course. They have a normal course on Pandas, on the exercises, so if you would like to go and code, 6 months access for 60 courses is enough to pass 2-3 courses for free. And for Ukrainians, it's cost like $13 a month. So anyway, you are saving.
There are a lot of 3 months access, 1 month access. It starts once enrolled or once you start using. You don't know.
I don't have it. I wish I would have it, but I do not. Then Data Camp, I had the access to the Data Camp, but I am not a fan of it personally. But maybe it will work for you. It's an interactive training coding environment, which you know. It has use cases from the industry. By the way.
How do you get to this page? GitHub education?
GitHub education, students info, student pack.
Students pack.
And probably, well, there are a few more educational things that looks good, even if you are not aiming to write the code. Everything else is if you really want to write the code. So those who are hands-on, you will have more things to find here. If you are not, go to Educative, play a bit with the tutorials and lessons. This can be good.
So it's in Educative, the system architecture courses, yeah?
The best the best general, very high level for the developer scalability course is on Educative. You will see exactly the same concepts that we talked yesterday. Vertical, horizontal scaling, exactly the same process of coming into the project, because there are only a few resources on system design online. One is free, one is more extended here, and they have exactly the same process. So I cannot add anything more to what is written by 4 engineers from Google about the system design interface. Yeah, so that's it probably. So enroll in Student Developer Pack, enjoy it.
There you go.
So,
Let's see what we're doing here.
regarding the general logic of what we've done. This is what I wanted to, and if we jumped a bit from topic to topic, no, let's then continue with this. So we use source control. GitHub is one of the tools. They are trying to educate people to use it, even though you can always use it for free, put it on your server. And together with a practice of using source control tools, more or less experienced manager can check how developers are working. In terms of, do they push the code, which quality of the code they push, how frequently, etc. What is also important that some practices with source control include code review, and the code review or experiment review or other things can be two things. Team lead makes the review or a peer makes the review. So it's either horizontal structured or more vertical oriented structure. Both have their pluses and minuses, but I've seen many companies, startups and the huge ones from old industries who neglect even the first stage. So, do we continue?
Yes.
So we write unit tests. This is the next level. What is a unit test? Basically, when you develop the code, some testing procedures are relatively simple and straightforward. There is even kind of development which is called test-driven development, which I mentioned on the first day. You write the test first, then you write the module that satisfies the tests. Same as in our system. This is big modules. This is not one of 100 modules inside, but theoretically we know the inputs and we know the outputs. Regarding tests. Tool seems a little harder, so let's skip. So unit tests actually help developers to write code with less bugs because they can test automatically things that are happening, but it's an extra overhead in the coding. Most of the modern languages help and support infrastructure for unit tests, so you do not need to write everything from scratch. But you still have to write the cases, mock up data inputs. For example, if there is no database, you have to mock up what is the input, which shape of it, which data it gets, and the outputs. Next level, it's track bugs. And if it's not Boeing and its engine control system or flight control system, in many system bugs are, there are some bugs, most of the bugs have low importance. So if they exist, they can stay in the system for a really, really long time. And sometimes it's not the bug, it's a feature, but inconvenient one. So bug tracking, it's a kind of, you add bug tracking into the equation where your development culture gives you a particular granularity between a research and development task, refactoring task, and fixing small thing task. It looks like not a big step here, but actual functional bug tracking is not common, I would say. It is common in stellar companies, but if we're talking about small ones or small projects or outsourced projects, I've seen a lot of projects which stay on this level. When they hire some engineer, interesting engineer who wants to improve himself, he starts to try to write unit tests or end-to-end tests, which are trickier to write. And he is usually pushed back because it's kind of an extra overhead and trouble for the company or for the team, because a lot of old mistakes or engineering kind of non-perfect ideas starts to resurface. Next is to write a specification. A good specification, especially in IT companies, is very rarely written. You just jump in, read the code, If the code is written in normal way, normal object-oriented way, sometimes it's close to the plain English, but you still see the read the code. And the specification is not only what is happening about the code. Many outsourcing companies I've seen, they write a spec about functional requirements, but very often we forget about non-functional requirements, which often change the shape of the system. Kind of the growth, the expectations of the managers, etc. So this is a part of the specification, the requirements from the stakeholders. And then the final and the trickiest part is the build often. Build often is about continuous integration, continuous development. It's a particular culture which again requires a culture shift, but in a different dimension. So they are not incremental. I mean, this one is incremental. If you do not have source control, you can have unit tests, but it is tricky to track the bugs. You theoretically can write a spec, but it's tricky to build often because your tools take code from source repositories. So they're not really vertical, but they go in more or less the same order. There are a couple of approaches of basically building often means that in incompilable languages you have to write the project and build it. When it's built, it's executable, you can run it for the clients or for the tests. And build often is a general notion that we are keeping our main repository in the state that it can be released any moment if we need. So for example, if we develop, so this is a main feature, if we develop a new feature, we either keep it separate or we contain it inside, that if we will launch our product in the final stage, in the current state, it will work. If we tested it, we remove the boundary, and the product, and we're removing the boundary just with one commit. And now we're sure we're removing the boundary and allowing new feature to work. Second passes, if the product will be built in a second, a new version would already be accessible to the clients. And there are a few flows. There is continuous development, there is GitHub flow, so the practices might vary. For example, GitHub flow is about you have your master branch, and this is time, it goes up, master, which has to be deployable any moment of time. If it is in master, it has to be working. And then you have branches of the development. For example, a developer, when he starts the project, he closed the master branch and he started to build new features. Then, for example, if another developer committed something, then later on the time, project already changed, but he finished development of this feature, so he does rebase, kind of updates the changes that happened during this period, and starts testing. He can start testing in this flow or kind of in testing flow. If testing passes, he pushes updates to the master. But at any given moment, everything that was into master is already tested. And we can track the progress of the developer, not the data scientist, because data scientists can sit about and meditate about the data for some time. But developer actually push the differences here, then they do modifications here, then they do the final one. And by this we track how they work. This is kind of reassembles GitHub flow. And then there is another part. If you have many developers, you can have multiple branches and a nightmare of merging them into one because things change. Someone copied the branch later, so complexity increases. There is opposite way. You have one branch, and everyone pushes commit to this only branch. If the piece of the software that developer is developing is big, he still commits to this one branch, but inside the switch, which is switched off. So we put a switch here. We do our software work in master, kind of all the commits into the master. And then we do a particular test, same as A/B test. For example, kind of very major systems allow us to roll out a particular feature to certain part of the clients, to superset of the clients. We monitor their performance, see that things are working well, and then we allow the switch, we allow this feature to go to all clients. So all the commits are happening to master. Either they're small, and the most advanced companies are doing daily commits. Like you came to work, you took your code, you worked for a day, you committed back. If it's a bug fix, you took the code, you fixed the bug in 2 hours, and you pushed back. So it's actually daily commits on the daily basis to the master. So your software product, it doesn't work well with spaceships and airplanes, but it works fine with online products. It requires really major infrastructure regarding delivery of this feature, so how you distribute it between clients, how you test that the feature is working, etc. But it gives a huge flexibility in terms of rollouts, because this containment of the features, they have different purposes. One of this kind of, you have finished the feature entirely. One of the things is actual A/B testing. So for example, you put a special table with a mapping device ID or client ID and if they're enrolled in the test. So for particular clients, some feature starts to work. Some of those features are for performance. For example, I know that, I hope it's not too confidential, but it's very logical. A couple of years ago, Ring, the doorbell manufacturer, during the Thanksgiving period, I think Thanksgiving when everyone goes at 6 or 7, Christmas, I think Christmas, when they have a huge spike of utilization of the doorbell, they shut off all non-critical features because the load is increasing, and they deliberately say we're preparing ourselves for a huge spike of the load by 100 times. So they're deliberately saying this feature is not critical, we're shutting them down for the period of high load. And the third usage of this feature is we still maintain the same product, but premium users use this feature, non-premium users don't. But it's still in the same code base, everything is tested and nice. Companies like Booking, etc., they do not do much site testing. They write a lot of tests, not only unit tests, but kind of testing procedures as developers. Then they build it for the client and see how the clients test it with the fast feedback. So there is no pile of testers who sit and click all the buttons to see if it actually works. They do the automated test by themselves, roll out to clients and check the main metrics. If it doesn't fall, probably everything is working. But in this case, the engineering culture has to be the most advanced one. It's difficult to work with data, it's fine to do statistics everywhere, it does matter. But being automated decision driven starts to be, unfortunately, somewhere here. This is the place where automated decision driven starts to appear and live in the company. I would say that over here, but I would like to prove that even writing a specification is enough maturity for starting automated decisions. Unless the core of your business is AI, for example, your business, the core of the business is to pick the best advertisement. Then, of course, the core of your business is automated decision making to pick the best advertisement. But everything else can be in the Stone Age. That's what I wanted to share about the engineering cultures. Any questions about the stereos?
How it's a bit less branched, how it's turning is.
This stuff is called feature toggle, and there is a good paper about feature toggles with examples of code in JavaScript, but you don't really need to read JavaScript, you just have to read a paper. And there is long-lived, short-lived feature toggles, and kind of all the classification is nicely explained there. And the simplest feature toggle is if-else, if environment variable test, run what is under the if clause. If not test, do not run. But then there is the complexity increases, and there are cloud solutions with special dashboards that measure that control feature toggles in the software of the clients. So I can sit on the dashboard and turn on features on the clients in US and turn off features clients in Canada or Japan, or even on the personal basis. Not on their devices, but on centralized interface. And that is way more difficult than put the if-else clause around the code. Some of the feature toggles require rebuilding the software or restarting the software, but the most advanced are considered to be switched in the runtime. So, for example, this second your application does one particular type of job, and then it switches and it does another one. Okay. But everything has to be monitored, because if you do the feature toggles, it means that you have to gather metrics from all these kind of features and how your users work with different sets of features. And the final piece. When we're talking on the top here, build often. So it's usually written CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous delivery. Continuous delivery means delivering into master repository, and there is continuous deployment. This means that automatically this master repository is pushed to the client devices. Usually these things are mixed, but in any way the end goal is to have the working code in any moment of time of your company. Whatever happens, you go to a particular place, you take the code and it works. If something is there, it means everything is fine with what is inside. And build often means your code base, your product can change on the daily basis. Okay, so and now let's try to mix kind of the final piece. Let's try to mix this with this and with data project checklist. This is just the general, the top part of the checklist, and each part inside has from 7 to 10, 12 questions, which add more details. Have the link if you need one. And from my perspective, this is the best piece on data-driven decision-making implementation in the company. What is interesting, it was published 7th of January this year. So it's very recent.
Just in time.
Yeah. So when I started to prepare the course, there were nothing like this. And 2 weeks before the course, I understand that I'm ready to recommend another resource. So you have to align also your homework to the strategy. So which objective we are trying to achieve with this organization as well. Kind of our objective is to practice data-driven decision making in the pet business, or we're actually trying to engaging in another way of thinking and working with the business and trying to bring changes not only on the level of the management but kind of change the culture inside. Do we have the data available? And this surfaced a few times during our 3-day course, mostly from your side. And I recall that when we're talking about the blockers of data-driven decisions, there was lack of data. And even more, sometimes there is lack of willingness to get the data. Because sometimes data costs money, and sometimes getting data costs just efforts, which company is not ready to invest in. So what kind of insights are useful for organization? It basically has few phases in my perspective, but it's about the request from top management. You cannot be data-driven top-down. You have to be data-driven with the support of the majority of the stakeholders. I mean, you can try to bring small, slow changes relatively bottom-up, but that's better go to work through another company. At least it's what I'm telling myself. Better go to work the company which appreciates the technology. Otherwise, it's about convincing, it's about soft skills, it's about corporate policies and informal trading favors in between to push your agenda, which you can go to another company and you will be asked to bring and not push it. Implementation. That's the biggest trouble of all small companies, which is not data-driven, and big companies who went to the classical business and they are just turning their heads to IT. Do we have someone who can build all those tables? Do we have some kind of implementation? Means not building a model. We build the model today. Implementation means all this, because it's about the decision making, not about the model.
The company is bigger than 20 people, that is why it's too late to implement the data-driven culture.
That's the strategy as well.
But it is time to impose.
Well, yeah, but it's 20 people, it's usually development. It's for 80 companies, 20 people. If you have 20 barbers and two.
No, I'm speaking about top the head office.
Ah, really? Ah, yeah. So, usually this is a big pain with organizational capabilities. And what is different from crisp them, that you do not plan maintenance, you maintain the system in place, track changes in operational environment. It's the part that we did here, and it's the part that we did in analytics. So if we omit our modules which control a model, control an infrastructure, control the performance of your model, we haven't finished the actual development of the data-driven decision, because it has to be monitored. It cannot be left alone. Because someone said that recency frequency matrix works, it doesn't mean it will work in your business. Well, and of course constraints. Constraints is everyone has a different set. Most of the budget constraints, but what recently reflected that when we're talking about implementation and constraints, consultants from big and major companies ask, can we implement this solution cheaper? But if you have no technology and no decision, decision based on data, you cannot implement it cheaper. You always have an increasing costs. At least in the first step, because you didn't have it, now you have it. The question is the business ready and is it in the scope of the business goals? So, is it an actual strategical decision? Etc. So, maybe you just do not need it. And it is perfectly fine.
Yeah, and you have some sense of the ROI for doing this versus the ROI for doing any of the 10 other things you can do.
And it is super important because there is a difference between declared and an actual strategy. And then, as Harvard Business Review wrote, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, that culture eats strategy for lunch, as far as I recall. So strategy is important, but it's even more important which culture the company has. So basically, I almost have never, I would say I would never seen cases where someone came into the company with a different culture and shifted culture of the company. Unless it's the company of 3 people, then it's fine. But if it's a corporation, it has to be CEO, and it takes 5 years to shift the culture a bit. And it has to be CEO like CEO of Microsoft, kind of. Very, very serious days. So let's wrap up a bit. What I wanted for you to take out of this course is the understanding that what we do, kind of data-driven decision making, is about juggling many balls at the same time. You cannot drop, if you drop one of those, it is not going to be juggling. And it starts from strategy, culture, data availability, embracing of changes, technology, infrastructure, monitoring, data science, and statistics. You can get rid of all modern things, but you cannot get rid of fundamental laws of matter. If distributions are wide, you will not see small differences in the means. If distributions are small, steep, you'll see the difference. That's it. If your samples are not random, you might mix things that you will never understand. If they are truly random, it's fine. That's it. This is like the laws of the nature which you cannot neglect. You always can try to get an extra information if you did kind of bias sampling to understand the bias. But very often the costs in terms of energy, effort, etc., associated with understanding some tricky process would be way, way higher than doing things right. Or even stopping what you're doing wrong and doing right later. That's probably the main takeaways.
So, generally speaking, what kind of decisions are being made without much data that could be being made with data? Out there in the world, like what are the kind of what's the scope of decisions that are being made? You're like, yeah, these decisions could either be benefit. These decisions could be improved with data. Generally speaking.
Well, the simple answer is everything can be improved with data.
Okay, well, how about the answer that's a little bit more narrow?
Well, let's start from...
Well, how about this? What's the low-hanging fruit of this technology? What's the easy and obvious wins for decision making?
I would say that there are no low-hanging fruits because you're either too small to jump to the fruit, and where you're tall enough to jump to the fruit, you have an extra weight of 1,000 people sitting with you in the company who doesn't want to jump.
But in abstract, the
Yeah,
type of
abstract. We have basically two ways of doing things. Either we save money or we earn more money. So I think that the most low-hanging fruits are in marketing, which we talked a lot, and the most measurable one, especially with online marketing, etc. Let me see. The most low-hanging fruits, second part, are with simple statistics. When we're embracing the change in the business, are we doing it based on data or because it's fun to have another consultant or a new screen in the store? But this is not a daily practice. Businesses do not change and change their structure and business models frequently. It's basically one experiment per year. So you do not need to be a data-driven culture to this. You need to be a data-driven manager or CEO who supervises one critical decision a year, and he is sure that or she that everything folds well. I've seen a good improvement in supply chain management, but this is one of the standard things as well.
Supply chain management from organization standpoint, the problem is more from
It's basically a trading organization or manufacturing organization. So yeah, I was telling during the lunch that I've been, last February I was in Copenhagen in closed event for IKEA and Accenture, where a few startups presented their solutions for supply chain management at IKEA. As a startup, so IKEA put some startups, kind of offered to startups to grow together and to build tailored product for them. The solution was a bit counterintuitive in my taste, but hey, everything is fine.
So here's pricing.
Yeah, pricing and stock management, but stock is about supply chain management. Dynamical pricing works well, especially in online industries. You have abundance of services of online pricing. You do not need to build your own, you go buy, check, pay. Another part in data-driven decision management, which is often omitted in many Ukrainian companies, but we're trying to aim in international context, is the way we set up KPIs. But it's not about the decision, it's more about the thinking about what matters and thinking about important metrics. Because one of the pitfalls with KPIs is people tend to do what they're bonused for. And on the big scale, optimizing one metric is usually a bad idea, especially in the long term. For example, if company optimizes revenue, it doesn't mean that the profit goes up. Or it doesn't mean that they optimize long-term revenue. It does mean that they can increase the revenue, but they can get too much, for example, expensive credits and get the increasing risks during recession, that they will be defaulted or whatever. Kind of, it's a graph of reasons and things that might go right and wrong. And it's simple to put dumb KPIs, but it's more about the culture of understanding kind of ambiguity in kind of that there is not one KPI, but there are many, and how we put them. By the way, regarding the KPIs and that one metric is not enough. Here is an actual analogy from data science world. Some of my peers build a service that they sell in Hollywood, and as far as I recall, successfully, which swap faces. Kind of, you can put your face in the cinema, in the film, for speeding up effects. Or, for example, one actor is playing, and then we put the face of the actual actor in the particular scenes. So, yeah, for the stunts, and usually people who are doing stunts, they are hiding the face, etc. And here they can show the face, we just put another face on top, and everything is perfect. So anyway, I'm not entirely sure about the actual business cases, but it seems to be interesting. And they built the whole pipeline of heavy, interesting neural networks. And neural networks, and in general optimization, has a cost function. So basically a function that says how bad or good is your result, which then goes to backpropagation, to gradient descent, etc. So neural networks, especially advanced ones, are known for composite cost functions. They do not evaluate, for example, precision for classification. In terms of swapping faces, they had face recognition pipeline which was given identification loss, so that a face swapped, but it is still the same person. There was a loss in quality, that we still swap the face, but the quality is good. There were, I think there were 3 groups of losses, which manifested into like 15 different losses that they had to combine for neural network to train well. And yeah, this is, next things are under NDA, but there are no tricky ways to make it automatic. Kind of, it's often bounded to human decisions. So when you say just do one way you do not do any interesting technologies. You always combine multiple cost functions, multiple losses. And I see it in neural networks and architectures and business, etc. And businesses, when the business gets bigger, it's trickier to understand ambiguity and kind of multiple the objectives. That there can be many objectives. So that's one of the low-hanging fruits about the culture, not about the technology. I think that's it. Well, there is decision-driven, another low-hanging fruit, but not for business, are in healthcare. Because a lot of treatments in healthcare are not based on hard data. And many protocols, even in developed countries, are biased. And I do not even want to tell what is the quality of biomedical research in CIS countries, for example, or India. There is generally there are rumors that 95% of biomedical decisions in our countries are biased and wrong in their statistical conclusions. That's probably it. EdTech, low-hanging fruits, but this is again a major market which has a lot of solutions providers, hundreds of companies competing. Recommender systems as a technology also have proven track record, and it's a particular scientific discipline. Let's say that a theory of recommender systems is not general data science. You have a separate courses on recommender systems and separate approaches. I mean, they're not separate, but they are very specialized. There are like 15 types of recommender systems. It's not just regression and classification. There is matrix factorization, time series-based recommender system. lot of things. Yeah, that's probably it. Any other questions?
No.
Good. So we have a bit of time for, yeah, we're supposed to finish slightly before 7. We actually have 1 hour for, I know, we had, how many breaks we had after lunch? We had, I think, 1 break. So we have a 10-minute break and a time for questions. And after the course, I am able to build a curriculum for you.
A what?
After we have finished the course, I'll build a curriculum for you. And
Curriculum.
upload a curriculum, and I will upload it.
Yeah, that's back engineering.
Back propaganda.
No, well, I've built hundreds of slides before the course. I've built an extended program, and each day, evening, I was tweaking the course based on what I've seen.
Refactoring.
Continuous improvement.
Cross-validation.
Well, hunch-driven, I would say.
Yes. Hunch-driven.
Cross-validation.
Hunch-driven decision making.
Because if it would be a course like somewhere in US business schools, we would do Monte Carlo simulations. We would sit with tables and do some simulation like, oh look, things are unsure, we do not really understand where it goes, now the probabilities are the following. That's also about decision based on analytics, and actually we talked about, what's not on the slides? We talked about local methods which have Monte Carlo under the hood. We were kind of like, there is Monte Carlo inside Monte Carlo simulation, but we do not know that it is there.
Monte Carlo is good only under the hood because
Carking. That's what we call curriculum. Curriculum after the class is over.
Had the one before class. Had extended one before the class. Doesn't make much sense on experimental programs. Done. So the feedback is that at least one of the views that I've structured the course which goes through. Well, we can start if you want. I'll start. That I've structured the course through kind of thinking paths, which is more difficult to understand and grasp, and it was biased to marketing. For some people, it's a benefit, but it doesn't show what happened in other industries.
Yeah, I did too much marketing.
Yeah, and the other way would equally distribute techniques in between different industries and show different kind of pitfalls in decision making based on industries and not based on the process. Because I was more process oriented than industry oriented, but miraculously it came to marketing. That was kind of explaining marketing is definitely not my intention. My intention was to show the troubles which appear during the thinking process or during the process of working with data, maintaining the code, building infrastructure. So next time I would deliberately bring more examples from other, for example, from supply chain.
Yes.
Kind of, for example, the model would be from supply chain, or matrix from supply chain, a model from marketing, and A/B testing from A/B testing, because this is just a statistical framework for making decisions, comparing things.
So this process has very good value, yeah. Especially the testing is not covered, yeah, in other courses. This process,
It's not covered in any courses in Ukraine,
yeah, so
and
it's,
not only in Ukraine.
yeah, I think it's a big, really very well, yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
thank you.
I agree with that.
So more other industries?
More of industries. Also, I think something like some discussion about the theoretical, or not the theoretical, like the principles of some of the decision-making pitfalls as well, and then showing those examples across different industries, like the kinds of like when you go to a company sale, we need to let's have some data-driven decisions, and they say, okay, well let's test it on something, let's figure something out. So aside from marketing, what are other areas where there is a chance of a success, a chance of a win, and some decisions that are currently being made poorly by human beings, and why those decisions are being made poorly by human beings, even though there's data available, some of that kind of thing.
Well, theoretically, I try to put the answers. The thinking biases, and extra effort if it was not absent. But yeah, I think that it would be beneficial to put more examples of the failures, how a company actually loses money. But I think that it will take me until the next year to gather use cases.
Yeah.
Because if you do not know how much money people lost on the biased decisions, like case studies.
Yeah, and the decisions don't have to be ones where they're not data-driven decisions necessarily that were bad, but just some classic kind of bad decision making and how data-driven stuff might have helped that.
That would be second guessing. Kind of. We know that it is a bad decision, so I would make up how we could do it better.
Yeah.
And this is kind of hypothesizing after results are known. That's exactly that, because very often I find myself in the situation where on the same place I would do the same.
Yeah.
Having the same information, having the same pressure, etc. So even if afterwards I look at some use cases and see, oh gosh, that was so dumb, I am pretty sure that if I would be at that place with this kind of pressure, with this kind of time frame and that resources, I am kind of sure that people who made those bad decisions, they are not worse than I am. So
Yeah, but now I have their bad experience, right?
yeah.
So I can say, okay, I'll make sure, look, here are these failures where they missed this data, so when I'm constructing my own data decision-making processes, I need to look around, look at these types of things, like.
Good. So I'll gather more, come next year, I'll gather more use cases from different industries about the potential troubles that happen during unclear decision-making processes. Good. Point taken.
In addition, also what was really good, in addition to this process here, overview in principle, yeah, so the engineering practice, so this is the engineer approach, yeah. I think also was good is your sharing experience, yeah, because you have this really wide experience, expertise, and it was very practical, yeah, and very specific, yeah, for things. It's not
Slightly bending NDAs.
not really very theoretical, yeah, like sometimes for other courses, yeah. This is also good to mention as a good shortcut, yeah. So
I would also agree with that.
Yeah, so anyway, even if you've heard use cases that will work for 5, 10, 15 minutes on a weird topic, that's an actual industry use cases, just type a name of the business is changed, and type of profession is changed, but everything else is the same. Kind of. So we actually, with changed names, we solved an exact use cases that I've seen in the industry. Some of them led to failure.
Yeah, so, I mean, so that would be interesting too, to have some idea about what was driving. Forget back to my same thing.
Well, that's the biggest I could bend an NDA. To change all the words, but keep the same situation, the same logic. Good. Something else? Yeah. So one of the feedbacks in Russian was that it was useful to refactor the code. So we were clicking through the snippets of the code and then to create an incremental solution based on the existing.
Yeah, that was very useful.
Yeah, so probably next year or for the next course I prepare even better notebooks because those have some typos, text, etc. Because I was not sure about your coding level. I checked the kind of the contents of the previous courses. I read them 10 times, but I didn't know how difficult it is. So some of the things have three variants. Like today's notebook has three shapes, and the first one I've started to code as well. So I think I'll prepare more complete tutorial, and if I think I will prepare it with very similar to these use cases, and I would like to send to you the extended version as well. And they will be more readable as a separate tutorial. Yeah, basically the same, but instead of let's do this small thing in the comments, there will be an explanation why it is, which method underneath, etc. So, kind of same, but slightly deeper and self-sufficient.
We also could be improve to improve perception of information. Yeah, maybe to add also some graphical information in presentation. Yeah, so not only the text, but also. I understand that this is a time.
There
Yeah,
are
so
not much.
yeah, but it's hard to perceive. Yeah, so when it's only the text.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, then as conspect, yeah, it's a good, really good. But during the lecture, yeah, it's
More paintings.
Did you guys did you guys review the cohort analysis stuff or no?
Which one?
Remember you talked about cohort analysis as one of the homeworks?
Yeah.
You guys reviewed that? You guys went over that?
no.
Well, we talked on the first day and then I was silent about it all the time. So I think I will add cohort analysis as an extra. If you're not sure about your mark about this, do cohort analysis and get extra type points or something like this. The cohort analysis is actually more coding exercise in Pandas than an exercise on making decisions. So I wouldn't value it much. It's one of the methods of informed decision making, but not. I'm sure if you would need to do cohort analysis in Excel, you will Google cohort analysis in Excel and do your stuff in 2 hours. And in Pandas, you would spend longer time for it because it's slightly tricky. Well, kind of, it's like that. You have to think how to manage the tables.
In principle, for this course, the main part is really the coursework, yeah, with this process.
Yeah, this is integral knowledge of everything.
So diagram plus some report, yeah, with this.
Yeah, and how we draw the conclusions out of it. What we have to do to get the conclusions that we can trust.
But actually no coding, yeah, so it's,
No.
it's process.
Coding is applied skill in this case.
Then maybe another thing would be some discussion of, we say, oh, what data do they have? Again, some discussion of the type, what kind of data companies do you tend to have? So like the first step in things like, or one of the early steps, like, okay, so have a look at what their data is. So you imply that the data is bad, it's messier. So what kind of data though does exist out there? What kind of stuff is available? What's the starting point? What's a typical starting point of a company that's just beginning this? Like what sort of?
Yeah, I'll think about it. I'm very biased because when I'm in one of the biggest retailers in the country,
Yeah.
even though they do not have much, I have huge data sets and huge databases with millions of people inside with purchasing history for years. And still no analytics on top or relatively poor analytics on top. And for the small company, you might have nothing. And you might have an Excel sheet for just to sum the revenue or call sum that this month's what we're doing that. So I'll think about the use cases. Well, it makes sense, but
I mean, so for example, like for this company, so the kind of data they have, so they have purchase histories attached to individual customers, and that's pretty typical.
it's loyalty program, but it's not.
So because it's a loyalty program.
Well, it's typical, at least in Ukraine, to call loyalty program something which is not loyalty program, because they do not issue personalized recommendations. They just give you bonuses on your previous purchases and get your sales history that they do not use. So this is just purchase history plus bonuses, but no recommendation. This is half of the loyalty program. This is data collection stage. But I'm lucky to be in the company which is very good at this for the last few years.
So that's why they have this.
Collecting, not actively engaging. Others even do not collect. And so you have to create a business mechanics to issue, for example, loyalty cards, write the data processing, collect the data, store the data.
Right. So are there methodologies? So let's say you have point of sale transaction records for 10 years, but they're not attached to any specific customers. Are there methodologies for extracting useful data out of these kinds of things?
The first one that I am feeling useful is check which kind of goods are being sold together in one check as data mining procedure. I'm not entirely sure what retailer would actually do with it, but marketing departments seem to be happy with this kind of insights. These goods are good, but they actually multi-level insights because, for example, if a retailer has a supplementary product like napkins, you will have many products with napkins, and then you have to strip the obvious ones and then dig somewhere in the list to the interesting ones.
Okay, so just exactly that. So what makes them interesting? How would I know what's the interesting ones? What is the characteristic of an interesting product?
Not the supplementary. For example, you do not earn much money out of the napkin. So if it is core product plus core product, and not core product plus napkin or chewing gum. And if you bought a car and a chewing gum, it doesn't really matter. If you bought a car and a motorcycle, sounds kind of both. Second product has to be relatively expensive. Let's call it this way. So it has an influence.
But are there kind of systems for identifying sort of proxy signifiers? Sure, napkins are meaningless, but actually, this one kind of napkin is like 3 times the price of any other. So people who buy this napkin it means other things about who they are, or it's
It's clustering, and now we're kind of this way. We're imposing human-inspired hypothesis, so we have to test it. And clustering is not very robust method. You have to kind of to make very clean some sort of data and then try to infer solutions. So it feels like there is too many ambiguity and mess of the data and difference inside the data. So your clustering approach is unsupervised will find something else.
other ways of extending human intuition that are good. You know, like there's
You just look at multiple results of the clustering and concordance analysis, what is always what you think, what it means.
you have 100 sales people, and like so these 4 people are good. Can we find out? Can we simulate what it is they're doing? Can we figure out their methods, or
For me, it resembles the quality control.
What, sorry?
Quality control. But our hypothesis that these 4 we expect that everyone are fine, but these 4 are superior. So it's an opposite hypothesis to quality control. We're trying to find not what is bad, but what is good.
What is good? Yeah. And then trying to spread that around.
Exactly. So it's like quality control with switched hypothesis, and then we have the corrective procedures not to the outliers, but to everyone else. Okay, something else you want to share?
I think it might not be the scope of the thing. I think it would be interesting to have some discussion of, we talk about the obstacles to adopting these methodologies. Like, so what are actually some successful methods to overcome these obstacles? Would be interesting. And these are good discussions. I mean,
Yeah, this is good discussion about how to embrace the change, how to bring change into companies.
how to convince people,
To convince people, yeah.
where to start.
From the demand. At least in my perspective. I tried to start not from the demand, it never worked. I think my 10 years of actively trying to change something isn't much, especially when comparing to Stanford or someone there who they brought from Y Combinator, for example. But in my experience, everything that I was doing based on verbal unconfirmed request, which is not confirmed by data, never ever gave a good return on effort in terms of the result. And the last 6 months in between jobs, I was investigating. I spent pretty decent amount of time training customer development, not data science people, but startup stuff. And what was interesting is that Y Combinator has a startup school, which is free. You can enroll, look at the courses, etc. And of course, they attempt to select very particular types of the startups, which grow fast, and etc. So it's not the standard rule for everyone. But basically, what they say that startups in early stage have 2 jobs: talk to the clients, build the prototype. Only in this order. First you talk to the client, then you build the prototype. Haven't talked to the client, then you build the prototype. And when you talk to the clients, they strongly offer to find the following. If the client realizes that he has a problem, if not, he will never pay. If he realizes that they have a problem and he is looking for solutions, but somehow solutions are not good enough, that's good. Because money, time, or whatever resource person is spending is not an extra. He takes it from something. So, an expressed need is that multiple clients understand that there is a need and they're looking for solutions, but somehow they cannot find the one that fits. Otherwise, it's not like combinator type of business, because the combinator type of business has to grow very fast. You can foster foster a demand, you can grow it slowly, but it's very unpredictable. And basically, changes happen only when new technologies appear or big legal changes happen. And new technologies, I mean like penetration of mobile phones or penetration of smartphones with GPS. So, for example, Uber and all the ride-sharing apps become possible because they have gotten smartphones with GPS. So you can call the car not through the phone. And you had a lot of players who started to connect around the platform. And before, 10 years before that, Uber would have no sense. And the main driver of Uber's growth is a number of drivers, not number of passengers. Because if you would wait for the car for half an hour, unpredictable amount of time, between 5 minutes to 45 minutes, you would never ever use the Uber. Because like, yeah, I can go now or in 45 minutes. Like, wait me from 10 minutes to an hour. I'm taking a taxi. So sometimes drivers to grow a business, they are slightly counterintuitive on the first view, but it is possible when you have enough cars, and you have enough cars, you have to have a smartphone in each car, and you have to have enough people who are ready to pay wirelessly and call the cab through the phone. So there is very limited amount of big major changes, either in new technology with high adoption rate, or on high adoption but on very specific market, or legal changes.
Okay.
Massive ones, but then it's room for billion-dollar companies. Otherwise, it's just a business.
Are there things that everybody wants to use data-driven decisions for that is just, don't bother, it's not possible, it's a waste of time? Don't try to design this system because everybody has tried it and it doesn't work and it's not going to work.
There is a kind of request that I've met before. When you come to, we had a few times a situation where we came to a big retailers to tailor our products for their needs, and there is no understanding, no internal understanding of the technology, how they can use it. So, innovation managers are starting to name their request based on fantastic films they've seen before. Seriously, like, let's do this, and that.
Minority Report, I guess? Minority Report?
No, let's track emotions, blah 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 blah. Like, how can you improve your business when you're selling potatoes? Like, understanding emotions of people in the store. Not much. Not much can be done. Understanding emotions of people shopping potatoes from the houses around doesn't improve sales. It's just fun. For technology guys, that you would never earn money. So this kind of things I've seen before, and not only emotions, different kind of smart heat maps to reorder, store, blah 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 blah. Like, let's put 50 cameras, track everyone in the store, put a pile of graphical cards to analyze everything.
So we really specialize in potatoes.
The store sends cheap potatoes, beer, and something else. Like, So we actually confirmed that men spend slightly more time in front of the beer, and women spend slightly more time in front of the cakes. With heat maps. But that is actually true.
That's just surprising.
Basically, we had a test store with multiple cameras inside the store. We were running face recognition without identification, just age, gender, and tracks. Face is on one side of the human, so kind of we sometimes lost, we didn't understand it's man or women, but still we had some data. And then we transformed a view from the cameras from the side, we put it on the heat map, and did the different heat maps for men, women, employees, etc. On the map of the store, like different hit points where people spend time. Super expensive for the store. I have no idea how you can spend, I don't know, $20,000 on technology, and then like, yeah, let's try to earn $20,000 more this year spending potatoes, selling potatoes. So a lot of things just do not match with ROI, especially in the hyped directions where the complexity is still very high. That is
one sentence in your explanation sounded very much like an engineer. He said a face is only on one side of it.
well, I had to explain to people that they are like, you know, there is a trouble.
Face is only on one side of the camera. We've run testing, that's true.
Yes.
And it's also applicable, maybe it's good to put not only organizational examples, but also some product examples, yeah?
Yes, you're right, because I have a series of products which we built a lot of prototypes inside, even in computer vision, and not only. Before that, I built, for example, prototypes for resume mining service, which you just drop your resume, and it shoots you back with a potential working places. You do not search, you do not type anything, you just drop your resume, you pass a bit of psychological tests, and you get the recommendations. For a British company, for example. It was like 5 or 6 years ago. So I'm not surveying all kinds of products. I'm not a venture capitalist, but there is plenty of reflections on how people build products, how much money they actually spend, because I benchmark our expenses on the products that are doing similar things with the companies in US. And it's about data-driven stuff. So, but it's also tied a lot with a class that I think was last year about the startups. But
it was your class?
No. I can theoretically do it, but I wouldn't say that I'm a famous startup. I work in a couple, some successful, some are not, on engineering roles and C-level roles as well.
And where maybe to read it about these products, or which could example, because for example, for me, I'm more interested in the product, yeah, not in the, let's say, providing some consultancy to the companies, but in the product application, yeah. So, I guess, for example, the Netflix, yeah, it's not completely product, it's more service, yeah, but
it's still a product company. It does matter.
But it's product company, yeah, for example, yeah. So it's different from the barbershop, yeah. So
it's different, but well, many companies in what I see, the best was from Booking. They said that we are a hospitality company, not technology company. It just happened that we are good in technology. So I see a potential for the barber shop with a lot of automated processes inside which are growing well.
You will see.
Investing into kind of, even with venture investors, into the barber shop, into the chain of the barber shops. And the core
I'm not against barbershop, just
I'm actually very serious. Kind of with a particular growth slow control. For example, I checked if I can consult and build a product for a chain of barbershop in Czechia. They have roughly 60 barbershops, 60, so 10 times, yeah, 12 times bigger than you are, and they're aiming at 200. They are on the cheaper side, so kind of on the standard things. They do not have manager. They have automated analytics and terminals for payment. It's like barbershops for 30 green or whatever it is, weird ones, but in Czechia. With slightly better set of services, and they have their own engineering team who, for example, engineers. It was not painful for them. They declared it as a way, kind of as a request, like, oh, we'd like to count how much services our barbers give to the clients based on the video or based on the a sensor in the chair that the client sits, that the client stands, and then to cross-reference it with amount of payments in the system, because there is no manager, there is nothing to control. And they're growing well. And it's a chain of 60 which aiming at 100 plus in a year or something.
And they're self-financed or they're venture financed?
No, I think it's ex-Russians who earn money in Russia. It's some oil business before and then move to another countries and kind of. But they seem to be decent managers, at least by feeling. So yeah, it's self-financed from the deep pockets. But
Deep pockets and deep looking.
well, they do not have the data scientist, and basically what I was thinking about computer vision in their case, and then I was thinking how we can measure amount of services given, and then I've been kind of, they wanted a system to be very autonomous. So for example, if it's a sensor with a chair without a wire that can work on the battery in months, 1 month. I'm not very good at electrical engineering. Theoretically it's possible, it was not fun, so I proposed them a smart plug which measures electricity consumption, and based on electricity consumption you can estimate the amount of services given. And smart plugs are connected to Wi-Fi. First prototype is built with TP-Link smart plugs, which I accidentally happened to have at home, with reverse engineered API, so like, let me test how it works.
But for barbershop it will not work because there are a lot of mobile devices.
Well,
just attach them to the clipper, so you just take so like it's you're only detecting the
or accelerometer, like Amazon does. Fitness watch. Yeah, so there are many things which can be data driven for classical business, which slightly improves the business model. Kind of. If you are not ready to remove a manager, these improvements do not help you. If you are ready to take a kind of a leap, start to survey more and remove a manager, you would get improved revenue for particular type of the business. For example, not for top level. So there are a lot of, and this is kind of data driven also. You make an experiment, you see how it sticks, and then you decide you stick in the business or not. And this, I would say, more about the business models and how you validate your assumptions.
For example, currently I look at the curriculum at Udemy online course, data-driven decision making. And for example, they have this separate section use cases, yeah, and use case overview, use case 1 CO, use case 2 product development team, use case 3 marketing team, use case 4 UX team. So this is just also maybe a good example for structure, yes. So I'm not telling that
So basically it's A/B testing, A/B testing, A/B testing, something else. What does it mean? Based on the cases I hear, because UX is A/B testing, marketing is A/B
and
testing.
before it was decision engineering, I guess it's about the process, yeah. And then it's use cases, yeah. So Just
I think it's a new course because I didn't recall it when I proposed this course to the business school.
it's Udemy data-driven decision-making course.
Where is it happen, this course?
It's online.
It's
Oh,
it's online with Udemy.
oh, very good.
I think $500 or something like this.
129 and 99 cents.
Come on.
So, look, that's what we have done. This is the one that we were talking about, people who are coming in, ages, genders, and you can add face recognition. This is the part of consultations in the store, based on very simple solution. Yeah, just proximity.
Proximity plus time, just like threshold.
And it works fine. Queue monitoring, employee monitoring on the cash desks, and this is kind of not properly built the groups, so basically it's not queuing, but staying in the zones, and then there is, even with a person behind the poles, there is still interaction here.
Is it right then?
Yep. Well, kind of, this is just the videos of the system that we built.
Oh, this isn't happening now.
No, but our system was doing it real time.
Good to know that on this Facebook and this.
That's it, exactly, right? Pull it from Facebook. I remember at the beginning of Facebook, there was someone made an app.
With that checks.
So strange. Age range, like 16.
Very-
Yeah.
Wow, это мужик.
It's age well, kind of, I think we did just by 15 years, but usually in retail, especially one, we use even smaller, kind of, even bigger ranges.
Oh, yeah.
Teen until 18 to 30, 30 to 55, and retired.
That's actually useful.
Young is able to pay,
Yes.
retired.
It's or child has a child, doesn't have a child anymore.
By the way,
Child for a grocery store, like has a child in the house, but not have a child in the house. It's what
we were doing also a child monitoring system, which was counting visitors with children and counting groups, because it changed the conversion and management wanted to understand how many purchases. For example, if couples are coming, we were doing human benchmarks of is it a couple or not, at least visually. So our system was detecting there was a simple rules. On the test videos we built it, roughly 80% of the couples.
did couples spend more money?
No, they wanted to subtract couples. They wanted to treat couples as one buyer for conversion.
I'm wondering if the couple buys more.
Maybe I have.
If they would.
Well,
It's my instinct.
that's client's logic.
Then you encourage people to come as couples.
Yeah, and then we had a shelf monitoring system which monitored products on the shelves, they're taking, if they're empty shelves, etc. A few other things. Action recognition system, if someone is falling down and what they're doing, but in early prototype it doesn't have much sense in CS retail.
Anti-theft.
Anti-theft, there is a similar in Japan. We were building most of the building blocks, but we had to do a lot of benchmarks and particular action recognition set up. So, for example, there are a few approaches for action recognition, and the one that was fitting to our structure edge to cloud, so some things we calculate on the edge in the store and some we send to the cloud. We were basically doing like skeleton, and then based on the actions of the skeleton, we were calculating the actions. So we could calculate the skeleton in the store, but calculate the actions outside to decrease the load. We had to put a particular kind of, we stopped the project. It was not on the priority list. We had to build a particular data set of meaningful actions, because all the action data set at that time was like playing flute, shooting from the air, bow, swimming, and kind of not the same set of.
Yeah, this starts happening in the grocery store.
Yeah, so the open source one for science was kind of really weird ones. So we actually had to build a stand with cameras around from different angles and to put kind of a different set of movements like hiding something, kicking someone from few directions. It doesn't matter about the overfitting because we would use only skeletons.
Yeah.
So if the key point actually works, everything else is kind of good enough. So, and since cameras can be anywhere, we had to film from multiple positions for neural network to actually understand that this is hitting from left, right, whatever. But we stopped the project on the data collecting stage. For action recognition, everything else was kind of on the prototype stage was fine. Particular action recognition, so the one that is relevant for the stores. Then this attention mapping stuff, which I keep head pose. We even built an eye tracking based on RGB cameras, not simple cameras, but it didn't really work well, so I dropped it and left just the head pose.
What kind of expectations of improvement do people have from these ideas?
Improvement of their businesses.
Yeah.
For example,
This depends on the size.
it's not always an improvement. Sometimes it's a changing of the business model. For example, advertisement in the transport makes advertisement in the transport. You can let's go backwards. There is an analytic businesses which pays people to walk and write down advertisement that they see. And they supply information to the companies who manage big boards, with traffic, with amount of people, so they can charge for particular places more. Basically, with this technology, and the first one who rolled out this technology was Mac, years ago even. We can put use of like cost per view or cost per contact, CPC, which is computed directly on the ad spot. So we could sell advertisement for kind of same ad spot and sell different people different ads, and advertisers can pay like on internet but on the street, in transport, etc. So it's a kind of a new area of business, but it doesn't show the growth. There is one company in Switzerland which was roughly of our size but specialized only in the advertisement, and we were broader. There is one company in Paris which is more than 10 years old and based on evaluation on TechCrunch or kind of the platforms which have investments. They are self-sustained, they're earning money, but it's not growing, it's just the business that grows slowly at this point, and that's probably it. Mac released it a few years ago before us. So kind of, there is theoretical potential, it's high, practical potential, no one knows, kind of, it didn't appear as a deal breaker in ad tech. This thing that I showed is a big theoretical help for operational director, because we built a system which analyzes different parts of the stores, transform it to KPIs, to standards, and sends the business metrics, like for example, we expect employees do not spend much time alone, but spend more time in proximity to client, just in case client would like to contact the employee. And for example, and we were transforming it to the business metrics as like percent of time alone, percent of time with client in the view of the cameras. And then we could do the benchmarks between different stores and even different departments in the store, and alert manager if it actually looks like clients, employees are hiding from the clients. without personalized kind of not this person is hiding, but to alert a top manager. Basically, we're increasing transparency of the regional businesses to C-level. Because every morning they have a report for yesterday, how the salespeople work, where if there were queues in the store, how they were treated, if everything is fine, etc. And like you look at one page, like yes, the store is somehow something gets wrong. If it's 3 days in a row, I would call the regional director and ask to figure out what is happening. So we basically, humans see way more better than robots. We understand much more in spatial orientation and what people are doing. But we are putting unskilled surveyor in 10,000 cameras and put direct noisy feedback to the C-level.
That's basically flagging things.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what we were doing.
Okay, I have a business idea. A camera inside your home that watches your dog, and when the dog shows sign of agitation, it dispatches a dog walker to the house and walks your dog.
It's a pet cube, Ukrainian startup.
Yeah.
I know the CEO, we studied in the same school.
And it dispatches the dog walker?
No, but they,
Never mind, it's my idea.
I think, well, first they had just a laser pointer to play with the dog, then they add the feeder and start to compete with Samsung, add the feeder and that talks to the dog and then throws the food. And then they claimed that they use a bit of AI to analyze behavior of animals. Well, claimed. I didn't follow the PetCube much, but
Subscription, you need a subscription.
it's subscription based.
So you have to send the dog walker. And then if you look at my code says, once per day, send a dog walker.
Yes, that's exactly how AI startups are built. And
The
then,
AI is, once a day.
no, but seriously, it's not even a joke.
Roll the dice, do once a day, and then 1 out of every 6 days, send it twice a day, so the person's confused. Shuffle the time of arrival of the dog walker.
But that's how it's supposed to be built at the beginning. When you measure customer attraction, how customers interact, you put Ukrainians or Indians who look at the video feed, click if the dog is agitated. It's definitely faster to roll out than AI built behind it, because technology, just this piece of technology, is not unique. A business model with it is more important, so I would just put humans first.
What's the name of this business that's stolen my IP?
PetCube.
PetCube?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, new business idea, the same thing, but for prisoners, and you let them go for a walk in the prison yard when they become agitated to stop riots.
There is another pivot, Cherry Home AI. They built a system for homes which was supposed to track your children, what happens, and without no cloud. Everything is at your home, everything is private. It didn't work well, and now they switched it to elderly care system for elderly homes, which you put, which alerts caregivers if someone shows a weird behavior, like going to a nail somewhere high, and he's 90 years old, and this is non-standard behavior of the person. I think they have gotten 6 million investment during the last couple of years. B2B sales, because B2C with families didn't work out. At least what I've heard. So, but then again, technology is not unique in this case. I know plenty of people who can build this thing, but I know almost no one who can sell this thing. And that's the problem.
It's always executed.
Well, plenty of things means I know 3 technical directors who are able to build it, and all of them are kind of cool. And well, same, I know a few people who can execute it also, probably three.
No, I don't execute the technology, I mean execute the business plan.
Who is this?
Well, it's basically people with a good track record of business who built businesses before. So I know I'm sure about the execution, but they're busy. They're all busy. And engineers who can build it, it's also engineers who executed difficult technology decisions before, they also all have jobs.
But about what companies are talking about the ring? What?
Well, there are few people who do computer vision. There is another computer vision startup which has a team of 25 developers in Ukraine, which does weapons detection on the surveillance footage. If someone draws a weapon or fall downs, etc. They are growing as well. They have gotten some investment. So kind of there are a lot of weird things even in one domain. But if you take another technological domains like NLP, chatbots, you'll have plenty of the solutions. But it's about new business models. We do not do the old. We have to change the old saying to start doing old saying in a new way. Okay.
Thank you.
So theoretically, we can do the course in startups. I usually give a talks on the conferences how business decisions influence technical decisions and vice versa. That you cannot just do a business decision without understanding the limitations which a technical implementation has and vice versa. Okay. Good. Well, let's call it today an official end of the course.
Okay. Now we can